Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm DeMar DeRozan's least favorite podcaster, Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. We've got a great show for you guys today. We're giving out our NBA awards, we're doing all our All-NBA stuff, and we had a good show on Wednesday. If you want to go see our final top 10 contender rankings before the playoffs get started, we did that with our good friend Tyler. And in that episode, we pretty much ended by being like, man, Twitter's the worst. I hate Twitter. I've got no use for it. And then the next day, I go and I get myself into this mega ultra viral beef with DeMar DeRozan. I already made a video basically giving all my thoughts on this. But Logan, you said you had some thoughts that you wanted to share before the pod, so I'm very interested. I mean, what's your take on this whole situation?
I do have a lot of thoughts about this. One, I think you're completely right. I don't disagree with actually anything you've said. I think you've handled this beautifully. Two, I didn't expect him to respond at all because it's like, it's kind of preposterous. It's like, hey, DeMar, you put the ball in the basket all those times. The record is you're going to be in the no one's taking that away from you. Like, you already accomplished it, man.
I don't have that kind of motion.
Holy shit, dude. I think we need to have like a social interaction seminar for Twitter. And don't get me wrong. I've known you for you've been my best friend for a long time, Carson. I normally understand when you're being funny, when you're being satirical, and I thought it was very obvious. Like, you know, traditionally I would use the word disturbing for maybe like global events that are going around, right. Like, you know, actually important things like,
yeah.
I wouldn't particularly use disturbing for a guy surpassing someone on the all-time NBA scoring leader. I don't really think there's a ton of nuance needed there. That was probably the funniest part of all of the interaction, though. The fact that it just, like, whoosh, just completely over the top of everyone's head.
Well, I think that's what has started the entire thing, is the fact that I phrased it that way, which was a complete joke. Like, the point that I was making is it's super weird that DeMar is going to end up as a top 10 scorer of all time because he's not nearly on the level of all these other players, right? That is what I was saying. But I phrased it that way because I thought, oh, the absurdity of this is going to be funny to call it deeply disturbing. And then the number of people who took that word as gospel and were like, this is 100% literally what you meant was just insane to me. And that's where I'm like, man, Twitter is just a hilarious, hilarious place where, like, if there is any room for something to be misinterpreted, it will be, willfully or not. But I do think there's a lot of willful misinterpretation just so people can get super mad about stuff that it's, like, ultimately not worth getting mad about, in my opinion.
At all. I just think some of the reactions are very hilarious to me about all of this.
And it's like DeMar doesn't know me, so if DeMar took offense to it, didn't understand that I was joking, which like clearly was the case, wasn't my intention, but I have no control over that. You know, I thought that Elon legalized comedy again, Logan. I thought that was the whole thing, and now we've got the fucking tone police, comedy police. Like, that's the funniest thing about it to me.
The other interesting part about this to me is it kind of opened my eyes to something that I don't think about that often, and it's the fact that there is a very major disconnect between like NBA players and NBA nerds like us, like analytics and stuff like that. And I know that I've known that there's been a disconnect, but a player like DeMar DeRozan, I feel like he's like a litmus test almost in terms of like how you think about basketball. And it's funny to me the fact that, I don't know, it's almost like fundamentally understood that players like DeMar, I guess, and among groups of guys like us that talk about basketball and do this very often, and that they aren't winning players, and it's not like a knock on them. Like, I think you could play a role on a winning team and go get buckets for somebody. I'm not saying that you would lose but it's just kind of fundamentally understood that that's their role in history and that's their archetype, and then you get into hoopers, and it's just like that's not just like how differently people think about basketball. I would say, so to speak, is very interesting to me, and how that is a broader scope on the state of how people talk about basketball nowadays.
Right, and obviously career total points do not measure impact. They don't measure winning value, which is like why DeMar is going to end up where he is on the all-time scoring list. And I understand that, and there are other guys who fall into that same sort of mold, like a Melo, a Neek, whatever, these guys who have massive scoring totals because of their scoring ability at their peaks, but also their longevity, who, like, I'm not very high on in terms of impact. It is just different when it's DeMar DeRozan, who was never a top 10 player in the league and is going to wind up, again, passing Shaq and be right behind James Harden and Wilt and Dirk and Kevin Durant, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's a very weird thing, but what's really funny is I've been working on this video basically about the illusion of the box score is what I'm calling it. And I did the video on the illusion of aesthetics over the summer and sort of how viewing the game through that lens is going to lead you to some incorrect conclusions when it comes to actually how good, how effective, how impactful a player is. And I think the box score in terms of counting stats has a lot of pitfalls as well that I'm getting into. And it was just funny because I already had a line written into the video, which was basically like on-off data isn't perfect, but it's not a coincidence that Chris Paul's teams were way better with him on the court throughout his entire career, and DeMar DeRozan's teams were overwhelmingly worse with him on the court. Like, it's funny to me when people look at stuff like on-off or impact stuff or whatever, and they're like, those are the numbers, as if it's some sort of theoretical thing. And I'm like, tracking points, rebounds, assists, like, that stuff is created when you're talking about it on an individual level, right? The objective of a basketball player is not to accrue individual stats. It is to impact the game. So when you look at how a team performs with versus without a player, you are actually looking at the single most important real thing, which is, do you impact the desired outcome, which is winning the basketball game or not? And DeMar, again, overwhelming throughout his career. His teams have been way worse with him on the court. Especially in the playoffs, it's been ugly. So, like, there's just some fatal flaws he has as a basketball player, right? Like the off-ball weirdness, the spacing weirdness of him not being a three-point shooter, playmaking overall throughout his career, negative defense, and he's a beautiful scorer to watch, but he does so on average efficiency. So I don't even know how you can really dispute the reality of DeMar DeRozan as a basketball player. I think it's mostly people who don't like how I phrased my original tweet or got fired up that DeMar responded and like then wanted to be a part of it or whatever. And I think that's actually pushing some people to take this position in terms of defending DeMar, the basketball player, that really like is pretty irrational.
Yeah, it's very irrational. I mean, what I would say too is it's like, I don't know, it's almost created this new kind of second debate and divide of pure hoopers versus the analytics nerds. And that's why I've got a couple of follow-ups, but one, I do think you kind of put DeMar in a body bag. I don't really know how you come back from that. And, like, I do feel bad.
Well, he came back by saying you live behind a computer, dweeb.
It's like, it's kind of like that time when I was getting bitched on the ASU court and I told the guy to go read a fucking book because he didn't know the rules. It's like, wow, I owned his ass, right? No, dude, I mean, I thought it was
also additionally funny when, like, you're getting upset behind a computer right now, DeMar.
Yeah.
And also, I put my face on camera. Like, I'm not fucking hiding behind some avatar. Like, this is my job. This is what I do. I'm out here every day very publicly.
But that's why I think the whole thing was just kind of lost in translation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just kind of like a misunderstanding. And
totally.
Like, I like DeMar DeRozan, the human being. I think he's a sweetheart. Every time I've heard him in an interview, like, the guy's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a good human being. He's got a good heart. Like, I think he's a good guy. So that's the part, and it's like, that's why I just think this is so just fundamentally misunderstood. It's like, DeMar, you're one of the toughest buckets of all time, man. Nobody is taking away from the fact that you have some of the best footwork and some of the most aesthetically pleasing highlights, and you're an all-time mid-range scorer, and it's like, hey, man, the points total backs that up, too. You know, it doesn't the numbers that Carson was pointing out kind of corroborate the fact that you weren't all that impactful on winning, but you are an all-time bucket getter. So it's like
and also the longevity. The guy's almost 37 years old, and he can still give you 20 a game. Like, in terms of the points total, it's real. Again, the thing that's weird, and I think we all intuitively know is weird, and it's like fake to pretend that it's not, is that the dissonance between where he's going to stand on the all-time scoring list and how good he actually is as a basketball player, it's just weird. And we all know it's weird.
And I don't know why we have to feign ignorance and pretend like it's not the case to protect his feelings. And it's like, that's why I don't want this to come off. Carson and I appreciate and understand his game and know what a talent he is. DeMar is unbelievably skilled and talented. And I just want to make very clear that Carson and I we're not ignorant. It's not like we don't understand how great he is. It's just that, no, it never translated to winning.
It's two different conversations. There's an appreciation of the skill and the aesthetics of scoring, where DeMar is obviously wonderful to watch, and then there is the conversation about basketball impact. And I think very often people conflate those two things. That's what I tend to push back on. And I do think that a lot of that is like the origin of this whole thing, but I cannot emphasize enough how much I am not actually disturbed by DeMar ending up as a top 10 all-time scorer, being on that trajectory. Like, that is where I feel like you are just hitting your head against a wall if you engage in this stuff. And I've said this in my philosophy with Twitter, that very much stands true in this case. Like, I put my thoughts out there, and then I fucking pull the ripcord, man. I'm out of there. I've gotten so many texts of people saying, oh my God, shit is going down. And I'm like, great. I want nothing to do with it, because if you don't understand that I'm joking, if I can't convince you that I'm joking by just saying, hey, I was joking, like, we're not going to get anywhere here. If you think that my intention when I tweeted that original thing was, I hope DeMar DeRozan sees this, and I hope it hurts his feelings, and I hope he knows I'm being 100% serious, like, you just don't understand my intent, and I can't make you understand that.
Yeah, and that's something that bothered me going through some of the replies, and I had to stop too, where it was like people were saying that you were being purposely disingenuous, that you were like rage baiting or something. And I'm like, guys, Carson just tells you what he thinks, and he's going to keep it a buck. And
that's the funniest thing. I thought the tweet was so uncontroversial when I put it out there, and I see now again where people misunderstood it. But like, this is the thing, man. This is why I'm like, maybe I got to get off Twitter. Like, I never go on Twitter with the intent to outrage people.
Yes,
and I feel like
I know.
I always outrage people by saying what I think, making a joke, whatever. So that's just kind of the game. And by the way, like, obviously I harbor no hard feelings towards DeMar. Like, again, he didn't understand that I was joking. His feelings were hurt by it. He has a right to respond and call me a clown, whatever. And then I have a right to respond and say,
yes, you
well,
do.
this is what I meant by that. And like, he got personal. I tried not to get personal in my response and just say, look, man, like, this is literally what I mean. This is why I think it's weird. You're not nearly as good as these other people. And, you know, I am a clown. I just rather he didn't call me a clown. And I am a dweeb. I just rather he didn't call me a dweeb. But once he went to, like, the behind your computer, you're hiding dweeb, I was just like, there's nothing for me to respond to that. You have no response to what I actually said. I'm actually criticizing you as a basketball player. And if you're just going to resort to, like, this F-tier generic internet insult, then it's like, all right, conversation's done here, pretty much.
That's why I think you got him. I don't really think there was a response. I tried to explain the situation to my sister, and she said, well, what do the stats say? And I said, damn, Lily, that's a great point.
Great point, Lily. Other things that have happened in the last 48 hours since our last episode is you gave Joel Embiid appendicitis. How did you do it?
Oh, my God, dude! I took the Sixers out the bin for one show!
It is disgusting what you did to him, this sort of witchcraft. I hate it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Philadelphia. If you guys want, I can put you back in the bin where we started.
Have to.
And maybe this will fix all. I felt so bad, man. Like, I definitely put the bad juju on Joel Embiid.
I have never seen a more cursed body of an elite athlete in my life, because obviously there are people who have these like degenerative lower leg, knee issues, foot problems that like just linger and get worse throughout their entire career. Joel Embiid will break his face. Joel Embiid will get Bell's palsy. Joel Embiid will get appendicitis. Like, it is actually unbelievable how many different ways his body can break down. Fucking hope he's fine for the play-in. I don't know exactly what the appendicitis recovery time is. I know that it's not that bad. I mean, my buddy Dimitri had it in like 9th grade, and he tried to get through it by pounding a bunch of waters, and I think he was okay a few days later. But, you know, playing a full contact sport at the highest possible level is a bit of a different beast.
You want to hear a crazy story?
Yeah.
My dad took 2 separate women on dates and had their appendix burst during the date.
What sort of game is he spitting?
It's just crazy to me. One was a woman he met before my mom, and then he did it to my mom.
Damn.
Yeah.
His Riz is so powerful that he causes your internal organs to combust.
Apparently,
he doesn't
man.
make your heart race. He makes your fucking appendix burst.
Now, Jimmy,
That's
where were you
work.
when Joel Embiid, when his appendix burst?
Yes.
What were you
exactly
doing?
Right. And I hate to say it, but you might need to put your dad in cuffs, and you might need to take him down to the station. You might need to be a fed on the old man if he has anything to do with this. Prayers to Joel Embiid, man.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what's happened. Other than that, I think we can get into our awards, our All-NBA, and let's start with the big dog, Logan. MVP, who you got?
I've still got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Earlier this year, I called him the best player that I have had the conscious privilege of watching. I still believe that. I think he has been at such a stupid high level all year long, and this is an all-time MVP race, too, I'd say. And not terms in how really close, I think it is, but just the cast of characters and what great seasons they've had. Jokic has had an unbelievable season, start to finish. Wemby has had an unbelievable year 3. I think Luka Doncic had one of the best stretches of basketball this season. So, really good race. I just don't want to take Shai's consistency for granted, and that's kind of normally my stance every time we talk about SGA, because he is so great on a game-to-game basis that you can kind of take him for granted, and I hate when an athlete is so great that we're just like, he did it again. But Shai's been unbelievable this season, 31, 4, and 6 on 66.5% true shooting. And what I think is so unbelievable, and you've mentioned this in videos that you've made about SGA previously, Carson, is just how stupid efficient SGA is at the volume of touches. He has the second highest true shooting percentage of any 30-point-per-game scorer, and I want to hammer this home again. This has been true all year long. He is just behind 2016 Steph Curry. The other part that always gets kind of lost in the mud when we're talking about all these counting stats, SGA also has the fewest turnovers per game of any 30-point-per-game scorer in NBA history. Like, he is the volume and efficiency master. He does this every single game. He is, for my money, one of the best isolation scorers I have ever watched, too. He's one of the best mid-range scorers of all time. Like, I do believe that Shai has reached the highest peak of any player that I've had the privilege of watching live in the flesh. And I think he deservedly is taking home the MVP award in a very competitive race, man. I think Shai has had an all-time great season.
You know that I disagree with the best player we've had the privilege to watch in real time take because LeBron exists, and I don't really think it's that close. However, everybody also knows how I feel about Shai, and I laid out his whole MVP case about a week ago and said it's essentially perfect, and I really believe that's true. Like, there are angles that you can try to find for Wemby and Jokic, but there are also flaws in their cases. And when you look at Shai, he just checks every conceivable box at such a high level. He's having one of the greatest scoring seasons, the greatest on-ball scoring season in NBA history. He's the first player ever to average 34 points per 75 possessions on plus 8% relative true shooting. So it's a combination of volume and efficiency we've never seen, which doesn't even account for the hyper efficiency that is even more dramatic because he never turns the ball over. And so if you look at the 5 most efficient play types on record with a minimum of 300 possessions, 2 of them are Shai on-ball play types this season. A Shai ISO and a Shai pick and roll are both on that list, I believe, with a Jokic post-up one season, a Harden ISO one season, and Steph off screens one season. So Shai, with the ball in his hands, is one of the greatest sources of offense in NBA history. And when you look at specifically scoring, like, we've never seen a campaign like this. And then I put out this poll on Twitter the other day, and I was like, in which way has Shai taken a bigger leap this season? As a scorer, as a playmaker? Because I think he's pretty clearly taken a leap in both ways. He's gotten substantially more efficient even as a scorer. He's gotten more comfortable with the step-back 3. But I think he's taken a bigger leap as a playmaker, and that was the consensus as well. Like, just the understanding of how to weaponize his gravity, the defensive attention he draws to create wide open shots for teammates, the ability to manipulate defenses, the court mapping, like the control of the game that he has now, both as an all-time great scorer and an elite playmaker, is really outstanding. And he does this all creating so much offense, the 3rd most points per game in the NBA, while he ranks like 30-something in possessions wasted. So just the ratio there of how much great offense he's creating for you against how little waste he has is truly remarkable, and something that, like, we've effectively never seen. I mean, this is why we say it's so Jordan-esque. And then you have the plus defense, and this all circles back to the reason I think Shai is the easiest player to build a great team around. It's because he is so flawless. He can carry your offense to such monumental heights while he also seamlessly fits in as a plus defender. And so that has led him to propel one of the great teams in NBA history this season. Like, the Thunder are 56-12 when he plays. They have a plus 16 on-court net rating with Shai. He is top 5 in single-season plus-minus per game again this year on record, which is a list he was also on last year. And the only other players on that list are Steph and Draymond from the 2016 and 2017 seasons. And he is substantially improving this team. He's got a plus 10 on off swing, and a vast majority of that is offensively, where he truly does transform this team. And we talk about this a lot, but OKC is loaded with defensive talent, historically so, but so much of their offense is just spread out around Shai, and Shai make every single play for us. And he is so great at that he makes them an elite offense when he's on the court. And then you have the fact that he's been by far the best clutch player in the NBA this season. In fact, statistically, he's got the best clutch season in recorded NBA history. He's averaging the most ever clutch points per game on ridiculous efficiency while never turning the ball over. It's just such a strong, bulletproof argument. And when I look at Wemby, it's like, yes, there is an impact angle there because the Spurs have been this monumentally great team when he's on the court, but also just the sheer difference in minutes between him and Shai. When you talk about total impact, and that's with Shai coming out early in a lot of these games because they're just bludgeoning teams and he's done his job, like still, Wemby has played 23% fewer minutes. He's played fewer minutes per game than any MVP in NBA history. So when you're talking about total impact, you then have to start to argue that Wemby is delivering that much more value on a per minute basis. And when Shai, I do think, is the best player in the world and has this bulletproof case, like I just can't get there with Wemby. And then Jokic started the year in this outstanding form, has finished the year in this outstanding form. I do think is still a top 2 player on the planet alongside Shai. But I think you can point to Denver's defensive struggles this year, which he has absolutely been a part of, and say that's why you haven't maybe lived up to your regular season potential. That's why you haven't been as dominant a team nearly as the Thunder or the Spurs. And so I think that's the criticism that you leverage against Jokic. And you look at Shai and you say, you've been a top 2 offensive player, no doubt. You've been a clear plus defender. You've been the best player in the world this season on the best team. So I just think it has to be Shai.
The defensively slanted lineups point is always the one that's really interesting to me too with Shai too, just because I don't think people appreciate that enough when routinely talking about Shai is just how valuable his skill set is and how, because a lot of people will make the argument that, oh, if we drop a Jokic in there, he would be just as successful, or if we drop this guy in the spot, and like, oh, OKC has such great depth behind him, and it's like the reason that you can have this great SGA just empowers it and makes it so easy for everybody else to just slot into their roles and do their job. Like, it's one of the easiest offensive responsibilities in basketball. Stand there, let Shai generate a wide open look for you, and it's easy. And just all year long, I don't know if anybody else in the league that creates like Shai from the perimeter gets defended like him. Like, just watch a game and watch how routinely in the half court he's got 2 or 3 guys on him, or he's got 4 of the 5 defenders on the court all with their eyes on him, and, you know, they're slanting and shading over towards him. Like, I just think and that's what's crazy too. Defenses try to gimmick up their defense game to game, and there's just 100%. Nothing they can do to the guy.
Yeah, I mean, he has reached this level of complete unstoppability as a scorer where you have to be super aggressive in all these different ways, and the assist numbers don't reflect his playmaking impact for a couple reasons. Number one being he disproportionately creates so many wide open 3-pointers for his team, which are obviously worth an extra point, that his assists on average are worth more points than everybody else's assists, literally. And so he's generating more points off of assists than the raw assist number would indicate. And then there's also the element of the gravity. And like, we have seen this so much, especially over the last couple months of the season, I feel like, where Shai is getting trapped, Shai is getting hard doubled, and he may not log an assist, but he is single-handedly creating the advantage that then leads to a wide open shot because he makes one pass and then it's just an easy little swing pass to a wide open shooter because you have to compromise your defense in such a crazy way to try to deal with Shai. I do think it's a pretty clear-cut case for him. And I do think this is an awesome MVP race. I think last year's probably a little bit better because I think Jokic was a little bit better overall last season. Again, he did have the lull in February this year. But Shai's case this year has absolutely been better. Like, Shai has leveled up from last season. Oh, that's why I think he sort of pulled away from the field more this year. As much as everybody tried to make this guy the contender against him and that guy the contender against him, I think he's going to win with an overwhelming percentage of the vote, and deservedly so. But the top-end talent in the league that we get year after year, I mean, you look at every MVP race since 2021, essentially, you've got like 3 dudes who are putting together these sort of like all-time seasons, and It's just who's got the best of that bunch, and this year, that is Shai. And I do think we're talking about a season that is on the Mount Rushmore of guard regular seasons in NBA history. If we limit MJ to one spot, like, you can kind of pick what MJ season you want, but it's 91 MJ, it's 2016 Steph, it's 87 Magic, it's 26 Shai. I just don't know how you can deny that, like, this season is at that level. And now to cement this as a Mount Rushmore guard season period, we'll see how he goes and follows it up in the playoffs, and I am quite confident in him in that regard as well. So we may not give this guy MVP, Logan, but I do think Defensive Player of the Year is the biggest no-brainer of all time. Who you got?
Yeah, this one's pretty clearly Victor Wembanyama. I mean, if he had stayed healthy last season, this would have been his award as well. He'd be a two-timer. This is Wemby's first of 1,000, maybe, depending on how long he plays.
He's immortal, so yeah.
I was going to say, at the end of his career, I expect him to, cryogenically freeze him or something, bring him back. He'll play another 1,000,000 years. Yeah, this is the most no-brainer, I think, of maybe any award of all time. Wemby has a negative 9% defensive field goal percentage on all shots defended. That's the greatest number that I've ever seen.
It's the biggest in 5 years, I think, since Giannis.
Wow.
Giannis or Gobert, I think, are the two guys who have posted better single-season numbers. I think they're the only two on record.
That's incredible. It's a little bit higher at the rim, negative 9.2%, and then the on-off numbers, the Spurs are way better with Wemby on the court. They also, fascinatingly enough, too, the opposing team's true shooting percentage drops off by 4.2% with Wemby versus him off. Like, he's got the most defensive gravity out of any player that I've ever seen play the sport, and he's a walking one-man defense. The only thing that I could still be critical, I think, about Wemby, and I think he's gotten a little bit better in some of these smaller areas like positioning and discipline. Defending in space is still the final hurdle where I think Wemby's going to have to get better at. And obviously there are certain limitations just because of how tall he is, obviously. But 80 to 90% of matchups, that doesn't really even factor in because he's just so damn big.
Yeah, I mean, just his paint defense is so much more impactful than any combination of defensive traits that any other player can put together. We're talking about one of the greatest rim deterrents in basketball history, one of the greatest one-man defenses in basketball history. When he's on the court, the Spurs rank as one of the greatest defenses ever. They have a -9 relative defensive rating. That's the same as the Thunder this year, who are the best since the 60 Celtics. I know I've said that a lot, but it bears repeating that Wemby single-handedly takes a defense from average when he's off the court to that. One of the greatest we've ever seen when he's on it. I think he should probably be the first unanimous defensive player of the year ever. I truly do not see a remotely coherent argument for anybody else. I think Chet is the guy who you would take the angle of best defender on one of the greatest defenses ever. But when you look at how singularly transformative Wemby is, and when you look at all of the insane defensive talent that Chet has around him, it's like there's just no feasible argument that Chet's actually more valuable there. I think you'd have to be trying to get cute with the vote. When Wemby's healthy, Wemby is going to win this award by a country mile every season for a long time. And this is the start of his reign. Obviously, as a rookie, he was runner-up. And then last year, if he had stayed healthy, he would have won the award. But this is a year when he got even better, even more impactful, even more polished defensively, and just completely laps the field on that side of the ball. Let's move on to Rookie of the Year, Logan. This has been another very controversial, highly disputed race. And we have talked about this a fair bit recently, but where did you ultimately land?
Yeah, I ended up going with Kon, and I've been on the side of Kon, even with Cooper finishing the season really, really strong. And I don't want to belabor any points because we have discussed this a lot over the past few weeks, but I'm still on the same side. Kon has led out and immediately impacted one of the league's best offenses and has been a huge component in cog in that machine. And like you always mention, too, I mean, when those three guys play, Miller, LaMelo, and Kon, they're one of the greatest offenses in NBA history. They've won a bunch of games when they're all healthy, too. It's just so rare that you see the immediate impact of a rookie and see it in such a big way, and not only leading to offensive results, but also wins. And Coop is destined for superstardom. The one point I wanted to make that we didn't get to, I don't want to look back at this race, and I don't want this to be a consensus feeling 5 to 10 years from now when people look at the awards
100%.
looking back. And correct me if I'm wrong, Emeka Okafor won the Rookie of the Year over Dwight Howard, right? Yep. I don't want to look back and people make that kind of argument against Kon, where Cooper takes this as a launching point, becomes a superstar, is a top 3 to 5 player in the league. And I don't think Kon's done growing either, right? I think Kon is going to rise to, let's say Kon gets to top 20 player in the league kind of impact, right? Somewhere around there. I don't want people 5 to 10 years from now going, why didn't Coop win the award? He's a superstar now. That was clearly the wrong decision because he's so much better than Kon. When, and I'm fine with you taking Coop if that's the argument that you want to make. I want to be clear about that too. I don't want it to be when we're in the moment, a bunch of people agree Kon deserves the award, and then we look back and we go, oh, Cooper was obviously so much better and always going to be the superstar, when I really think there is a clear impact argument for Kon right now in his rookie season, and he deserves to win the award. That's the one point that we didn't bring up when we were making this over the past couple of weeks that I've been thinking about.
Well, I completely agree, and it's very interrelated with the reason that I do think Coop is the favorite, and Coop is probably going to win this award, even though I don't think he's been more impactful this year. It is the projectability. Everybody can see what Flagg is going to become. Everybody can see that he is going to be a superstar, but there is a difference between how good you are going to be and how good you are right now, and we've repeatedly seen this thing where people look at the number 1 overall pick who has the big counting stats, and they start to sort of fill in some gaps in their game in terms of overlooking inefficiencies and lack of polish here and things that limit their impact at this very moment. Like, there's no doubt in my mind Cooper Flagg is going to be the best player in this draft class. I think Cooper Flagg is going to be a top 5 player. I have said he is the player under 25 I would most want to build around other than Victor Wembanyama, and I still think that Kon has been the better rookie. I do think that Flagg has a case, and it really depends on what you value most. Do you value sort of that raw production, that projectability of, oh, I can see these things that are going to lead him to develop into superstardom in terms of the on-ball usage he already has and the intermediate shot-making stuff we've seen and the size and athleticism and the flashes of playmaking, right? All of this stuff where you're like, yeah, Coop is going to be amazing and he's already producing with volume, but Kon has the impact because Kon is one of the very best offensive number 2s in basketball right now, and Flagg is one of the very worst offensive number 1s. And if you have to ask me which of those is more valuable, which would you rather have, I would absolutely have the elite polished offensive number 2 compared to a guy like Flagg, who again is immensely talented, but at this point just has certain inefficiencies, certain limitations in terms of his handle, in terms of the inconsistency and overall inefficiency of his three-point shooting that makes him too flawed to seriously figure in to a really good offense. Like we talked about this with Tyler, but Flagg shooting 27% on unguarded catch and shoot threes doesn't change just because he goes to a better offense, right? The unguarded shots don't get more unguarded. They're already open and he's missing them because he's not a good three-point shooter yet. And what frustrates me is when people take for granted that Kon has such an offensive superpower, that he has such a level of polish that is currently conducive to awesome NBA offense. Like, that is a real rarity. Against your run-of-the-mill contender for Rookie of the Year, like, Flagg would win this award a vast majority of seasons because he's awesome. Kon is a uniquely impactful offensive rookie who is doing stuff that we've never seen from rookies and certain things that like we've rarely seen in NBA history. He's the most efficient 18-point per game rookie ever. He's one of only 5 players ever to hit 56% of their twos and 43% of their threes while taking at least 5 of each per game. That's one of 5 players, along with Steph, KD, and PJ Levine. He's one of 3 players to take 600 threes in a season and make 43% of them, with Steph and Duncan Robinson. Like, he is truly already one of the greatest shooting weapons in the history of the game, who has a full awareness of how to weaponize that, right, as this just complete, absolute weapon off ball, who's been so elite screening for LaMelo this year and playing off of him in that way, who's been so elite coming off of screens, right? And then also has the complementary skills to be a complete offensive player where he can put the ball on the floor. He is a good intermediate shot maker. He is a pretty efficient finisher. He is a good passer. Like, he's just so damn refined right now. He has this like total A++ offensive trait, but he also has a complete offensive game. And so he's just been so impactful. He's got the 5th best plus minus by any 15-point per game rookie on record. And I just want to emphasize all this stuff to say we're not just blindly going, oh, this guy is a good contributor on a really good team, therefore he is better than Flagg. It's like, no, Kon is doing special stuff offensively, driving a legitimately elite offense and a legitimately awesome team, and he is doing things in terms of that polish and that immediate value that Flagg is not refined enough to do yet. You can be more talented and yet not be more impactful right now because you have way more room to grow, as Flagg does, and you have way more things that you still need to refine and ultimately will do and will tap into, and he's going to be amazing. But Kon has been more impactful this year, and so if you're valuing this award in terms of impact, I think it's Kon. If you're looking at it through the lens of whatever, who do I think is going to be the future superstar, who looks like the baby superstar out there, then it's going to be Flagg.
And, well, I want to be clear about something, too. I do think it's close because of the difference in situations and how Coop is grown and stuff. And it could come down to just preference, but
yeah.
I personally, I don't think Kon's impact is offset by the raw counting numbers that Coop may have the advantage in, because Kon has been stupid efficient and he has impacted winning at such a high level. And like you mentioned, he is doing outlier stuff as a rookie. And like I said, the big thing is I just don't want us to look back and have this different kind of, like, we retcon and this kind of revisionist history of, oh, how did Coop not win when Kon is legitimately having one of the greatest rookie seasons I've ever seen.
They're two totally different conversations. There's how good is a guy going to be and how good is a guy now. And I think the lines get really blurred there a lot, but if you can separate the two, I do think that Kon has been the better player this season, even though I think Flagg is absolutely going to be the better player. And again, like, as talented as Flagg is, he hasn't been able to save the Mavs from being one of the absolute worst offenses in the NBA this season. And the talent around him sucks, but their offense also isn't any better when he's on the court this year. They rank as like the 28th offense in his minutes and the 28th offense in the minutes that he's off the court. And so that's where, again, I think there's some projecting and there's definitely some taking for granted what Kon is already doing. And there is, as I've said, some increased focus on the highs with Flagg because his best games, again, they look like future superstar. They have future superstar written all over them. He's taking over these games with this on-ball scoring and he has these explosions. But then when he follows that up with a couple of stinkers where, I mean, he's still got the volume in terms of attempts, but I mean, he's missing a lot of shots, right? And the team is getting blown out. People don't really factor that in as much as they factor in the highs. And I just think on balance, Kon has been the better player. He's been the more consistent player end-to-end this year, who does have an ability to fit into a really good offense and totally amplify that offense and be such a key to it that is a really, really rare thing. So, with that being said, Logan, let's move on to 6th man of the year. Who you got?
I think this one's really interesting. This one and Most Improved are always some of my favorite to debate. In the spirit of the award, I think the most deserving candidate is Jaime Jaquez. And there's 4 guys that I want to give honorable mentions to because I really thought about this one a lot. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. has had an awesome season off the bench for Denver and has been really, really valuable in the dynamic that he has brought to them. I thought I was originally going to go with A.J. Mitchell for the Thunder, unfortunately, because he's played 57 games. If I'm going to be logically consistent with enforcing that rule for other awards.
It doesn't apply to 6th man of the year, though. I know. It's an awesome thing about how the NBA works. So if you want to dock him for missing time and saying that's missed value, that makes sense. However, he is not ineligible because the 65-game rule doesn't apply to 6th man of the year.
Adam Silver, you melt my brain, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. It rocks, and I think it's the best.
Ayo Dosunmu, I think, is deserving of a shout here. Could win this award if you wanted to give it to him. I think he's been excellent. And the surprise guy who I really consider, too, I think Dylan Harper should be in consideration for this award, too. I think he's been I've seen a lot of Keldon Johnson hype, and Shout out Keldon. I think Harper's been the best guy off the bench for the Spurs this season, so he would be my pick over a guy like Keldon. But I would give it to Jaime. He's given you 15, 5, and 5 this season. I think he brings me the most complete value of any bench player, and that's why I went with him. I just think can be a plus defensively, gets downhill at a great rate, can play off ball. Like, I just think when I look at all these guys, I think he brings me the most versatile kind of complete impact. And Jaime's gotten a lot better this year. He's also been off the bench more than most of these guys too. So I could see, in this, again, this is also preferential. I could see you making a debate for any of these guys I mentioned. I think Jaime's the best bench player, so I gave it to him.
Jaime was my pick at the midseason point. I think he's got a good case. I think especially early in the season, he was vitally important to Miami's new offensive system. Just the ability of a guy like that to be able to consistently create advantages as a driver and get into the paint and also be able to make the playmaking reads and be as effective in transition as he was as they were picking up the pace. Like, there were a lot of games where he was their best, most important offensive player. And so I do think there's an angle for him. However, I do think he's cooled down a bit. And I think there is a player who, to me, honestly kind of stands like a tier above the rest when it comes to just how good they are. And that is AJ Mitchell. And I think obviously the argument against him is 100%. He's missed too much time, even though he's eligible, like in the Rookie of the Year race. That's another thing that I think factors in if you're looking at value. Kon has played a dozen more games than Flagg. That's more time he's on the court delivering value for his team. That matters. And so AJ has to make up that deficit, but I think he has been so substantially better than any other bench player this season that he can. Like, I do think AJ factors into conversations when you're talking about a player who has the potency as a creator, as a playmaker, what he can do off ball, what he brings you defensively. We're like, he's just so well-rounded. And there's a world where you look at this guy and you're like, man, I mean, he was the second best player in that playoff series for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, right, could dominate that playoff series. And I just think there's a skill set there that is so supremely valuable. To me, he is a really good scorer. He's so shifty. He's so crafty. He's a really good below-the-rim finisher, like very ambidextrous, really good touch, very good at finding driving angles, and he has this awesome handle, so he's tough to keep out of the paint. And then he also has this awesome floater game. Overall gives you 14 points per game on 59% true shooting and has been really efficient in the on-ball play types, like somebody who you put the ball in his hands, he keeps the turnover rate super low, and then on top of the scoring ability he is a really good passer. So if you look at offense created, this is why I'm more inclined to the case of both AJ and a Jaime Jaquez, and even a Dylan Harper can start to factor into that conversation. I think way too often people look at sixth man of the year and it's like more or less most points per game off the bench or most points per game off the bench on a really good team or whatever. I think the ability to have that versatile offensive impact to create for yourself, but also create for others is a separator. And so if you look at like points created per game between AJ and Keldon Johnson, who I do think is going to win this award, AJ creates 6 more points per game and he's a better defender. And so I think the playmaking and the defense sets him apart from a guy like Keldon. And again, I've talked about his on-ball ability, but off-ball, he's a good closeout attacker. He's a solid catch and shooter. He's good in transition. He's a high field guy in terms of cutting and off-ball movement. Like, AJ just checks so many boxes for good basketball player. And I look at all these other guys and I'm like, there's more flaws in their game, right? Like, I think Jaime's real issues as a jump shooter can be a problem. I think with Keldon, there are some real passing limitations there. And I look at AJ and I'm like, that's just such a complete all-around good player who's been super valuable for the best team in basketball. And the difference between when he's been on the court and off it is like really meaningful. They're 49-7 in games that he plays. They've been effectively unbeatable. They're just 15-9 without him. He's got a +6 on off swing. They're a +16 net team when he's on the court, and he's been great playing alongside Shai as a second ball handler. They have a +20 net rating in those lineups, which is astronomical. And then he's also done a really good job of shepherding the non-Shai minutes to good results. He's got a plus 14 net rating when he's on the court without Shai. So he's clearly been their second best perimeter creator offensively this year. And I do think he means more to OKC than Keldon does to the Spurs, for example. And I also think he's just a better basketball player. And I know we're judging regular seasons here, but I do think like the playoffs are going to substantiate the value of AJ Mitchell, and I'm not sure that it's going to be quite like that for a Keldon Johnson or whoever else is up for this award.
That's a great point in terms of the points created thing, and I guess because Keldon's like the face of the Spurs bench, and like I don't know, he's done a good job finishing this year. He's played a lot better than I expected.
He's been really good.
I don't want to downplay, but I do prefer the skill sets and the archetypes of those kind of guys in comparison. I think it's just a little more valuable than the skill set that Keldon brings to the table. But I do want to give him a shout. Like I kind of wrote him off a couple of years ago as like an empty numbers. Like I don't really think this guy is going to be a part of the Spurs, and he's been really impactful.
Totally. I mean, he's made a huge adjustment, right? He's cut down the three-point rate in a good way, and just the offensive volume has gone down overall, which I think has allowed him to be more efficient. But he just pretty much plays bully ball out there. I mean, he's a lot to deal with in transition. He's good on the offensive glass. He's a good cutter. He has the ability to attack smaller defenders as a driver, and he's shooting a decent clip from three. So, like, he's a very good scorer. And there are stretches of games where you're like, oh, that team just can't really guard Keldon Johnson. Like, they can't really deal with him physically in the paint. And he's a very efficient scorer. But when I do look at the all-around impact, I do think that AJ is just the better player.
And I think AJ would start in a lot of different places
100%.
Across the league. He's so good.
I think AJ could start for the Thunder. I think Tyler was saying he expects him to close a lot of games, if not most games in the playoffs. Like, I think that's the sound thing to do. Again, as much as we like heap praise on Shai for carrying this offense, AJ has been the second perimeter guy for them. It hasn't been J-Dub, who's been out of the lineup so much and has struggled. Like, they have felt AJ's absence because the non-Shai minutes get way worse, and now they're missing another ball handler and playmaker who can play off of Shai and who can actually make plays off the catch and do all these things that he does. All the while, he's a plus defender, and so he's not hurting you at all on that side of the ball. Like, just a really, really good player, flat out, period, point blank. So I'm a huge AJ Mitchell guy. I totally understand if people are like, he's missed too much time. But again, when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I do think he's that much more valuable on a per game basis. I think he clears every other sixth man in the NBA, frankly. Let's move on to Coach of the Year, Logan. Who do you like here?
Speaking of no-brainers, I actually kind of feel like this is like giving Wemby DPOY. It's got to be Joe Mazzulla. And
dude, what's crazy is I think he should be unanimous. I don't think there is a case for another person, and I don't think he's going to win. If you look at the odds, it seems like it's still going to be JB Bickerstaff, which to me is just absolute insanity. Yeah.
Based on what? I mean, and don't get me wrong.
That's what the almighty sportsbooks say.
I've been impressed with Detroit and Bickerstaff, and I think he rocks. I think he's a good coach. I think he gets the most defensively out of teams. But, I mean, come on. Dude, I had the fucking Celtics winning like 40 games, like 30, 35 games, man. I completely wrote Boston off. I said this is a rebuilding year. They're not going to make the playoff. Yo, to flame myself, I had the Pacers winning more games, I think. I said, yo, Spicy P and the B team are going to win more games in Boston.
I tried to tell you how much they would miss Hallie. I really did.
And I'm a big Hallie guy. I was just like, nah, man, I like the talent. Mazzulla is one of the strangest guys I've ever seen coach a basketball team, and I love it, man. I'm moving towards you need a weirdo kind of freak at coach.
You're becoming weirdo freak-pilled. Okay.
Yes.
Nice. I like that.
In many facets of life.
Sure. Let's leave it to the basketball for now, but yeah, we can talk about that off camera.
Mazzulla is unbelievable. I love the analogy that Julian Edelman used in relation to Bill Belichick, and I'm going to use it again here. I just think Mazzulla rings the towel out of all of his players, and I mean, there's so many different contributors down the roster for this Boston team that if you had told me coming into this year, I would have said there's no way that guy's going to be impactful. There's no way he's going to be an important component of this rotation, and Mazzulla has just gotten he has gotten all that he can muster out of a bunch of players down this roster. If it's the Neemias Quedas of the world, if it is Hugo Gonzalez, if it's Jordan Walsh. And I also think this is interrelated with if we could just give a best staff or best front office, a best organization, Boston would take this too. I think their internal development rocks. I think their scouting department rocks. I think everything about Boston, they're a great organization. And shout out, Baylor Shireman, man. I didn't know if Baylor Shireman was going to stick around in the league. He drained like 5 or 6 threes the other night against New York. Swung, kept them in that game late. So I'm so just immensely impressed with Mazzulla, and I think he is by far the best coach in the league and deserves this year.
I completely agree. It has just been absolutely brilliant coaching end to end this season from him, squeezing everything out of this roster, like you're saying, dominating on the margins when you talk about the turnover battle. But the offensive glass has really been the point of emphasis this year, where they've been so exceptional, and getting great value out of previously relatively unknown players like Jordan Walsh and Neemias Queta and Hugo Gonzalez and
Luka
Baylor
Garza,
Shireman.
man.
Right, all of these guys who have never really played a significant role for a good team have been able to do that and positively contribute to this Boston team, because I think he understands the exact right things to emphasize for these players, how to utilize these players. And then you have on top of that the fundamental offensive adjustments he had to make in terms of scheme here, emphasizing some of that stuff on the margins even more so, but also rebuilding the offense without Tatum, where he is putting the ball more in the hands of his guards, and they are running more pick and roll and more handoffs with more off ball and player movement, and their offense didn't skip a beat. They've been just as great offensively this year without Tatum as they were at their best with him. And also, just as crazy is the fact that they managed to be a top 4 defense overall this season when Tatum has barely played. So when you're talking about getting a number 2 offense, a number 4 defense with Jason Tatum out of the lineup for a vast majority of the season, it's just a remarkable accomplishment. The culture that he has built, the buy-in that he gets from every single one of these players. If you think about the expectations for this team, like you were saying, Logan, and how middling they were, and then you think about what this team achieved and how great they've been, how consistently they've been top of the league in all these metrics, and then you think about how much of it was due specifically to coaching in all these different ways, Mazzulla being such an incredible elevator of this roster in a way that no other coach has been for their team. It's just outstanding stuff. And so props to Charles Lee, props to Jordan Ott. I think those have honestly been the 2 next most impressive coaches to me, guys who have just elevated their team with scheme, offensively and defensively for Charles Lee, honestly, especially defensively for Jordan Ott, and really getting the most out of their talent. But when you look at what Mazzulla has done and the truly elite heights that he's led this team to with talent that I didn't think was capable of that, I just don't think there's any way to give this to anyone else.
Yeah,
Shout out.
Well said.
Shout out to the Wolfman. Shout out to the psycho that is Joe Mazzulla. He is an incredible basketball coach. How about most improved, Logan? Who do you like?
There were a lot of guys I wanted to give this award to. Speaking of a Boston Celtic we just brought up, I have been a longtime supporter of Neemias Queta. The Kings never played him, and then Boston gets him in the rotation, and he has been their starting center end-to-end this year. He has been one of the best offensive rebounders and rim protectors in basketball. He is just an awesome component of this Boston team and defense. So Queta, I want to give a shout-out to. I want to give another shout-out to a guy that I've supported for a long time. I think Dennis Jenkins rocks. He was not a rotation guy for Detroit last season. He is a very important cog off the bench for them and can play alongside Cade when they need him. And I'm just impressed, man. Anytime that's one of my favorite stories in the NBA every year, when a G League guy or a guy who's been toiling away, busting his ass for 2-3 years in the G League, and then he finally gets that promotion. So much hard work and personal skill growth goes into that. So shout out to both of those guys taking that similar kind of journey. A.J. Mitchell is another guy that I had really strong consideration for this award too, where, again, last season, relatively unknown and is playing a very important role for the best team in basketball. And then this is more due to efficiency. than anything else, not a raw statistical or role increase, and I would give Ayo Dosunmu a shout. But I don't know if I can give the award to anybody else other than Virginia Tech legend Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And the fundamental difference, and I think I've made this argument for and against people in the past, but the leap that Nickeil took is the toughest to make in basketball, and so I want to reward him accurately for that. The other guys went from unknown G League bench guys to, consistent, impactful role players, and that increase is valuable. And I think in a more diluted, watered-down, most improved race, I think those guys would be really deserving candidates to win it. But outside of just the raw statistical increase that Nickeil has had, doubling his points total, his role has also increased. It is just due to the skill improvements that we've seen from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I literally think that, his improvement from really good role player to star, sub-star level player is more impressive, but he's just gotten better in all these different facets. And I hesitate to say this because he's cousins with SGA, but sometimes he looks like a damn SGA light out there, man. Like, it's cool. Like, his finishing at the rim, his intermediate scoring, the playmaking, the pick-and-roll presence. I mean, Nickeil just looks like one of these kind of sub-all-star level impact guys. Yeah. And, I feel the same way with Nickeil as that I feel about Mazzulla winning coach, Wemby winning DPOY. I think Nickeil is a shoe-in runaway kind of guy for most improved.
Yeah, he's my choice as well, and I do think it's become increasingly clear. Like, there was a time when it seemed like Denny was probably going to win this, but his form didn't quite keep up at that level, and, Nickeil just kept getting better as the year went along even, and the improvement is so dramatic. I've always liked him. I loved the signing when Atlanta got him, but wow, I did not see this coming. I think he's taken the second biggest leap by a new 20-point per game scorer that we've seen since 2000. I think only CJ McCollum has taken a bigger leap in one season, and then T-Mac is right behind Nas. So if you improve that much and you reach these sort of scoring heights while you're doing it, you're going to win most improved player essentially. As he's become more efficient, his true shooting percentage is 3 points higher than last year, as he's been a top 2 player on a legitimately good team, which he has made substantially better when he's on the floor. He's just such a good player, and I do think you see really solid stuff from him as an on-ball creator, and the handle and the finishing is solid, and he's a pretty good athlete, and he's a solid passer, right? But the three-point shooting improvement has just been incredible, and, he's shot pretty well over the last couple regular seasons anyways, but he had some playoff shooting issues, and to get to this place where he's making 40% of 8 3-point attempts a game, that's a pretty select club of elite three-point shooting that you're in. And an even more meaningful indicator, I would say, of his shooting improvement, he's gone from 78% at the line last year to 90% at the line this year on 4 attempts per game. He is literally 0.1% away from entering the 40% from 3, 90% free throw club. And there's only 10 guys in there, I want to say, if you have some volume minimum. So it's a pretty elite shooting season that he's had. And his calling card used to be his defense. He was one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA. I do think his defense has definitely regressed this year as he's taken on a much, much bigger offensive role, but that's relatively inevitable, and I don't really care about it, and I don't really think that's a significant knock against his most improved case when he's gotten this much better offensively, taken on such a larger role, and really done a very good job with it. I think this pretty much has to be Nah.
Also led to team results, too.
Right.
I mean, Atlanta's been better with him as the top guy.
And let me tell you something. I'm not convinced that when we get to a playoff series with them, he's not going to be the best player.
I agree.
I actually have more questions about Jalen Johnson's offense translating than I do Nickeil. I think the ceiling is higher with Jalen Johnson, but Nickeil, very, very solid. In the form he's been in since the All-Star break, Logan, 23 a game on 70% true shooting. That's where, again, his case has just gotten stronger as the year's gone on.
Well, I was just wondering, if I should have had, I don't know, that's a real debate to me. Who you would rather have, as your lead guy, maybe even long-term. Even with Jalen's youth, Nickeil has just been at a incredible level this season.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun to see him in a playoff series, but regardless, definitely deserves this award. Last one on the books, Logan, Clutch Player of the Year. Real no-brainer this time around.
I remembered it this time.
Let's go.
Yeah, but it was actually very simple. I didn't need to do a ton of research.
Easy to remember when it's an opportunity to glaze Shai, isn't it now?
Very, very much so. The only honorable mention I would give is Anthony Edwards. I mean, I think he had a stretch of this season where he was dominating teams, but Shai has run away with this, I think, pretty convincingly as the season has gone on.
Yeah, he's got the perfect clutch skill set, essentially, because he is such a dominant on-ball scorer, and he is such an insane all-time great intermediate shot maker, and that's some of the stuff that you're going to have to live off of in a more slowed-down environment if teams do, again, try to load up on you, and, like, Shai's just impervious to that. So most clutch points per game in a season on record, on 67% true shooting. He's got 175 clutch points, that's the most in the NBA, against 7 total turnovers in the clutch, Logan, and he's led OKC to a 20-7 clutch record. They've been completely dominant in the clutch, and the offensive formula is give the ball to Shai, let him go to work. That guy is pretty clearly your Clutch Player of the Year. So, there's all our award picks. Now we're on to the All-NBA, Logan, and here's how we're going to handle this in regards to the 65-game rule, because obviously we both hate the 65-game rule. We think the 65-game rule is stupid, but it does exist. So we actually put out polls on both YouTube and Twitter asking you guys if you wanted us to honor the rule or ignore the rule and just pick who we thought was deserving. And you guys slightly voted in favor of us ignoring the rule. But here's what we're actually going to do. Maybe we shouldn't have put out the poll because we're not going to do what you guys asked for. But we're going to try to hit this sweet spot where if it's still possible that you are deemed eligible, we are going to count you. And that applies to Cade and Luka because both of them are going to hit the game thresholds where they have the opportunities to appeal for a sort of special exemption and still be eligible. It's stupid. The whole system is stupid. All these guys should be eligible. We shouldn't have a games minimum. We should just be able to pick who we think is most deserving and weight games missed accordingly. But that's not the reality. However, if Luka and Cade do both get their appeals approved, and we fucking left them off our All-NBA list because we didn't know, like, fuck that. We'd rather have those guys on and be wrong about it later in terms of their eligibility than leave off 2 players who are very, very obviously deserving of All-NBA. However, if there is no possibility of eligibility, we are not counting you because we do want to be able to do some comparison to the real teams and say, oh, this guy should have been on, this guy should have been off. And so, Logan, that does mean RIP to your beloved Anthony Edwards because there is no path for him to be eligible. He's just missed the mark. And if you would like to say some words about that, I grant you the floor.
Admittedly, I am devastated, Carson. I can't lie to you. That's kind of basically why I wanted to ignore this rule more than anything else, because it's like, damn, what the hell did he average 29 points per game so efficiently for? And he's going to miss it by like 5 games, bro. Like, it is devastating. I think the rule is so stupid. I think we could just accurately dock Ant, as we've mentioned numerous times on this show before. Rationally, we would just put him on the second team because he missed X amount of time. You know, and I thought about some of and we brought this up before, so I don't want to beat this dead horse, but like I've thought about some of the seasons that we would have to omit, right?
Yeah.
KD going 25 on 50, 40, 90. LeBron balling out. Like,
dude, how about Bill Walton could not win MVP?
Yes.
The only guy to ever win MVP while being below the threshold, but guess what? He deserved it because his team was 50-10 when he got hurt, and then they went 8-14 without him and completely fell apart, and he was the best player that season. And he couldn't be third-team All-NBA.
Yeah, man.
Actually, they didn't have third-team yet. He couldn't have been second-team All-NBA, but it's fucking Silver's NBA, man.
It's so stupid.
I'm just happy that Bill didn't have to live to see it. No, I wish that he was still alive, but it sucks.
Charles Darwin. I love Bill, man. R.I.P. Bill Walton.
For real.
Yeah, I'm just sad. I wanted Anthony Edwards. He deserves to be on this list, and I just want to make that very clear. He would be on my second team pretty easily if Adam Silver did not rule the NBA with an iron fist.
Yeah, he's a very, very clear second teamer to me if he qualified. But alas, that is not the world we live in. Okay, so let's go to the first team, Logan. Let's breeze by the no-brainers. Shai, Jokic, Wemby, we already talked about as the top 3 MVP contenders. And presuming that Luka does get this appeal granted, I think Luka's a lock for first team All-NBA. Do we agree on that?
I completely agree.
So the conversation really starts with the 5th spot. Who did you go with there?
I think this is going to be controversial, and I'm going to stand on it. I have Donovan Mitchell in my 5th spot.
Talk to me. Make the case.
I think a lot of people would make the argument that the Pistons overachieved, that they're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They won 7 more games than Cleveland. Like, they clearly, Cade Cunningham deserves this last spot. And I think Cade makes a very good case for this. And if you wanted to make the two-way edge argument, Cade being a part of a really great defense, I would hear that. When I have a tiebreaker, personally, I go, well, one, my first question is who do I think had a better season? And I think it's close between him and Mitchell. My second question, that if I'm struggling after that, is who would I rather have? Who do I think is the better player? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the seasons are very close. The impact, I think, is very close. I think Donovan Mitchell is a slightly better player and a guy that I would rather have going into a playoff series than Cade Cunningham. And so you might still be asking, too, again, with the you guys value winning so much, the results. Yes, that is true. What I think can kind of get lost with Cade, sometimes I think Cade gets a wash with some of his inefficiencies because he is on such a good team. And so I think sometimes people can kind of overlook some of his shortcomings, the inefficiencies, the three-point shooting, the at-rim scoring. That's important to me. And along with it, I think a big component of why Detroit is such a great basketball team is their collective team defense.
100%.
And so I just individually don't think Cade is as solely responsible for Detroit's team success as some people would like to give him credit for, and that's my justification. I think Donovan just clears him as an offensive number 1 and player right now, and I also think Donovan Mitchell has had some adverse circumstances this season that he has not been accurately rewarded for in terms of media perception because of some things that aren't in his control, right? Like, I think Mitchell gets overly criticized for some of Cleveland's shortcomings in the playoffs the past 2 seasons that aren't his fault. Guys haven't been healthy. So this season, I think when you look at Cleveland, Max Strus missing a bunch of time, the roster overhaul, Darius Garland not being healthy. I also want to reward Donovan Mitchell for the fact that when guys were hurt too, he was still there carrying the offense game in, game out. So that is basically the crux where I come down on it. It was very close to me between Cade and Donovan Mitchell. Me personally, like I said, I think Donovan has had the better season. I think he is the better player. And I just don't want to arbitrarily reward Cade for his team winning more games when I think Donovan's impact individually has surpassed Cade. So I took Donovan in my 5th spot, even though I don't think that is probably what's going to happen. I think Cade is probably going to be on All-NBA first team.
If he is determined to be eligible after an appeal, Logan, which is going to delay the entire All-NBA voting process, by the way, and this whole thing is just a fucking nightmare, which is why, thank God, we actually don't have to follow any rules. We just have a podcast. None of this shit goes anywhere other than, on our podcast. But our efforts to be hyper-realistic, Logan, we're trying to honor the system, but the system is so fucking stupid and very frustrating at this point. I think it's a justifiable case. Those 2 guys are the first 2 guys on my second team. I think Mitchell has had a very underrated season. I think especially the form he was in like pre-All-Star break. The guy was averaging 29 a game and 6 assists on like 62% true shooting, and he was shooting like 58% on 2s and 38% on 3s, and it's just this very unique combination of crazy downhill pressure and finishing and touch and athleticism with the best mid-range shooting season of his career with, the red-hot three-point shooting, which has cooled down post-All-Star break, but the numbers are still so good overall this year, and he's done so much to elevate that offense.
I was just going to say, man, I really think he's leveled up as a playmaker this year in a big way.
Having his best season as a playmaker, and when he's on the court, the Cavs have a 123 offensive rating. They're 8 points better offensively with him out there, and it's just an amazing season, especially what he was being asked to do before Harden got there. Like, he was keeping that team afloat, and not just that, he was making them an awesome offense. So I think there's an angle for him. That being said, I went another direction, and I went with Kawhi Leonard, Logan. I think his case is incredibly underrated. He's averaging 28, 6, and 4 on 63% true shooting with a plus 14.5 on-off differential. And I think that is just such a testament to how extremely valuable he has been. Like, he is still one of the very best scorers, one of the very best offensive players on the planet. When you talk about the combination of on and off ball scoring, especially, he's just outstanding. I mean, this absolute machine out of pick and roll and isolation and out of the post. You just can't deal with the combination of size, strength, ball handling, shot making that he has. And then he's also this elite spot up shooter and a really good off ball scorer. And so he's just completely transformed this Clippers team. Like, it's unbelievable what he's done. They're 4-12 without him. They're 37-27 with him. And so when I look at that level of impact and I compare it to a Mitchell or a Cade, who I do think is the more likely contender for this spot if he's eligible, like, Cade's team is 13-5 without him, and he does only have a +2.5 on-off differential. And obviously, he does so much for that offense, but their defense is absolutely insane, even more so without him, and that propels them to win a bunch of these games. Like, you just can't overlook what the Pistons have been doing without him. It doesn't mean that Cade isn't extremely valuable, but if you take one guy off their team who suffers more, I think we've seen beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Clippers suffer more without Kawhi. Like, we've actually seen a very comparable sample size of these guys missing time, and one team was still awesome without their star. That's the Pistons. The other team was a complete disaster without theirs, that being the Clippers. So I think Kawhi is the better player. You're talking about that as a tiebreaker, but I also think he's been more valuable to his team this season. So he's first team All-NBA to me. Shout out Kawhi, man. Shout out to the freaking Claw.
I think he makes a really strong case. I am a little bit surprised. I guess the only pushback I would make is like the slight difference in games played, maybe. Like I'll
Between
go
him and
with
Mitchell.
that. Yeah, just between him and Don. Like, but that's very minute. I think Kawhi makes an excellent case, but I also think I just would rather have Donovan, just barely.
Interesting. I don't really agree with that. I think it's so easy to build an insane offense around Kawhi because he is so absurdly efficient and versatile as a scorer. All the while, like, he's a totally solid defender. And Mitchell does have some responsibility for the Cavs being very mediocre defensively this year. Ultimately, I think you can go either way. I also think you can make a case for Cade because he has gotten his team to like this 121 offensive rating when he's on the court with this huge offensive load on his plate. He's got the fourth most points created in the NBA. All the while, he is a plus defender. He is a plus rebounder. I think although we can criticize some of the offensive inefficiencies with Cade, what you also don't want to overlook is how seamlessly he does fit in to an awesome defense, which is far from a given for a player with the sort of offensive skill that he does have. So I think that's the angle for him. I do think that Kawhi is just a little bit better and a little bit more impactful in a vacuum. So I have Cade and Mitchell both on my second team. I assume that you have Cade and Kawhi both on your second team.
Correct.
So then who are your last three spots going to?
They were the first two on my second team, followed by Kevin Durant, Tyrese Maxey, and Jaylen Brown.
Okay, so the only difference we have here is I have Jamal Murray on my second team over Kevin Durant. And KD was tough because I have so much respect for him as a player. And I think he's always going to be so efficient as a scorer. And I do think that he's been a slight plus defensively. But I just don't think the impact has been what it usually is with him. I do think we've seen limitations arise in terms of his scoring volume not being able to reach the same heights, in terms of his playmaking impact really being lackluster at times and him struggling with turnovers. And I do think he's been put in an outsized offensive role for him at this point, where he's being asked to take on more as a primary ball handler and playmaker than he's really cut out for. He's really supposed to be like an amazing sort of offensive number two for you. But then I look at Jamal Murray and I'm like, he's creating more total offense than a guy like KD. He's been equally efficient if you account for the difference in turnovers, where Jamal is this great turnover suppressor and KD has had real turnover issues this year. He's got this incredible blend of on-ball and off-ball scoring, and I just think he's had a ludicrous offensive season, like 25.5 points, 7 assists on 62% true shooting, 90th percentile pick and roll score at massive volume, 87th percentile isolation score at massive volume. Absolutely absurd pull-up shooter. What he's done cranking up the three-point volume even a little bit this year and having a career shooting season in that way, but always a master of the mid-range too. while he's also having a career best playmaking season and has been legitimately very good there, while he also has very strong off-ball value in terms of handoffs, spot ups, curling off screens, like he's just such an offensive weapon, and he's the perfect complement to Nikola Jokic, right? Their two-man game is perfect. So when they're on the court together, Denver has a 130 offensive rating, which is completely absurd, but then when Murray's on the court without Jokic, he propels them to a 119 offensive rating, which is really damn good and is actually as good as what Jokic has propelled them to without Murray. So overall, I mean, the guy's got a 126 on-court offensive rating this season. I just look at some of these other guards, some of these other really good offensive players, and I'm like, Murray's pretty much creating the same amount of offense or more than all of them. He's 6th in total points per game created while he's doing it more efficiently. If you think about him versus like a Jalen Brunson, who I just don't think has had as good a season as Murray, but like his defense has also been far more passable, at least, than a guy like Brunson, who can be a major negative on that side of the ball. And he's leading his team to an awesome offensive rating, even when he's playing without Jokic. And then he's also the perfect complementary number 2. So I like Jamal on my second team. Do you have any pushback there? Anything you disagree with?
It's a strong argument. I mean, I think it's justified by this season. Jamal's on my All-NBA third team. I couldn't leave him off All-NBA this year.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just completely undeniable. Like you mentioned, they've got an offensive rating of 119 in just Jamal minutes, no Jokic.
Right.
That's incredible. Like, no, he was going to be undeniable. Again, when I kind of came down to it, I was just like, if I have a tiebreaker, I go, who would I rather have? I think I'd rather have KD very slightly. But I think all the criticisms that you're making about KD are very justified. The handle, the turnover issues, the rigidity, the lack of impact in other areas. So, like, I hear the argument. Again, I do feel like KD has been miscast this season, as you mentioned, having to play that number 1 role without Van Vliet. But you do see the limitations in his game that a guy like some of the ones that Jamal doesn't have. So I hear the argument, but I do feel pretty strongly that KD belongs on the second team.
Let me ask you this. Who's been the better offensive player this season, Jamal or KD?
Jamal.
Yeah, I think it has to be.
And that's where both of these guys...
argument for KD being a plus defender outweighing it.
And that's kind of where I came down on it. Is like... But that's where most of these guys derive their value from, primarily, right, is what they bring you offensively. So I think Jamal this season has a very strong case.
It's ironic because KD has been cast as sort of this offensive number 1, and obviously Şengün has a big role as a creator too, while Murray has been cast as this offensive number 2, and yet I think Murray is more equipped to be an offensive number 1 than this version of KD because really the playmaking gap has been substantial. And then I think they're both like awesome offensive number 2s. But I mean, what Murray has done this year as an offensive number 2 is so damn impressive. It's been a really great season. The two guys that we agree on, Maxey and Jaylen Brown. I'll talk about Jaylen Brown first because I have said many times that I do think certain things get overrated with him, and I think people can overlook that his efficiency and his turnovers are not ideal, and I think his defense can get overrated because he's not a very good off-ball defender, and I think more so many things get underrated about this Celtics team. People have looked at them and they've said, oh my God, they're so good. Jaylen Brown must be the MVP, and that's where they miss all the Mazzulla stuff and all these really, really good role players they do have, and the insane three-point shooting they have, and the crazy margin that they create, which is really owed to guys around Jaylen, and all these different things that they do where they're awesome when Jaylen is off the court, and they're actually a lot better statistically when Jaylen is off the court. But I do think his volume scoring has been a huge driving factor for their offensive brilliance, and you can say, oh, but they have all these guys who space around him, and they have more ball handling around him, and they have guys who can clean up the offensive glass, and all that stuff makes life easier on Jaylen, which is true, right? It's not like most offenses in the NBA, you can just space out, let a guy work at the elbows, and there's 3 or 4 lethal shooters all around him, and there's a couple guys who are going to be menaces on the offensive glass if he misses. Like, those are pretty ideal circumstances for a player who operates like Jaylen Brown as this very ISO-heavy, mismatch attacking, mid-range, downhill-heavy sort of forward. But he's been so good at it, and their offense is built around him in a lot of ways, and he has an ability to take over games and just obliterate mismatches that not many players have. And the volume stuff, 29, 7, and 5 is obviously significant. 57% true shooting, 3.6 turnovers, but the isolation scoring is so good, and I think specifically translatable to the playoffs, and I think that's going to be a real challenge for defenses to figure out, especially when they have the sort of shooting that they do around Jalen.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people just get angry because Jalen's had such a great year, and they're like, oh, do you have to be critical at all? But it's like, yeah, I mean, his team deserves a lot of credit for their success. There are really impactful defenders behind him. Derrick White and Cade, are having career years. They have a strong identity. They have good offensive players around him. Guys like Peyton Pritchard. Like, that context is important. And I would hear, I don't think it's a strong argument. I guess I would hear somebody if they wanted to make the All-NBA first-team nod for JB. I do think he belongs pretty concretely.
I got to draw the line
there.
See, that's where I do feel like I get put in a position all the time where I've got to criticize Jalen. It's not that I want to, because I do think he's had a really good season, but I think people just get a little bit higher on him than the impact would actually justify. But
I do tend to agree. Awesome player. But he's gotten a lot better. I actually think this year for him without Tatum has been beneficial to his personal growth as a player in terms of skill development and mid-range scoring.
Gotten better as a passer. Still leaves something to be desired there, but he's gotten better.
I was going to say, handle's gotten a little better. Also still leaves something to be desired. But, yeah, JB definitely deserves to be on this team.
Yeah. And then Maxey, I considered putting him third team because some of the impact stuff isn't as strong with him. And I'd honestly argue that Embiid has been their most valuable player when he's been on the court. But Maxey has had to keep them afloat without both Embiid and PG for half the season. And he did a pretty good job of that. And he is this elite offensive player who can create massive offensive volume at good efficiency. And he's also a good off-ball player. And he's a passable defender, which again matters up against a Jalen Brunson or whatever. I keep calling out Jalen Brunson, but maybe we'll come back and see why. I'm very pro Maxey. He created the 5th most points per game in the NBA this year, 28, 4, and 7 on 59% true shooting with only 2.5 turnovers a game. Great turnover suppression guy. Amazing transition scorer. Great pick and roll scorer. He's just a weapon. I mean, the combination of speed and floater shot making and the 3-point shooting you get from him is really pretty rare. He's one of the best scoring guards in basketball.
Honestly, the guy that I'm thinking about right now versus Maxey is Jamal Murray.
I could see that in your face. I could see you were computing that. Yeah, I think Murray's had the slightly better season, but I do think Maxey does still have a bit more of an ability to just carve up any defense because he can create so many paint touches where it's you run into the bad matchup for Jamal where he's overwhelmed athletically and the floor there is definitely lower. And Maxey's been asked to do more because he's had to play so much of the year without PG and Embiid.
I like that argument. Let's go with that.
I think you could go either way. I honestly think it's a toss-up.
It's close.
Shout out to Kentucky guards, Logan, always.
Oh, God. Murray's been so stupid efficient this season.
Yeah, he's a complete level up from anything we've ever seen from him in the regular season before. So, third team, you have Jamal Murray. I have KD. We've established that. I kind of want to go one by one here because I think this team is really interesting. Who's next on this team for you?
First guy on after Jamal, Chet Holmgren is on my third team.
Yep, same for me. And also, I do have it generally ordered in terms of, how strongly I felt that they should be on the team. And I do think that Chet is pretty much an all-NBA no-brainer this year.
Yeah, I just think how efficient he has been in his role while impacting the game at such a high level defensively this year. He would be second in DPOY for me in a lot of normal seasons. I think Chet would be a strong defensive player of the year winner.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just the fact that he's running into the alien. Chet really could have this kind of Tim Duncan-esque career in the sense that he never gets a DPOY because, I don't know. I mean, he's just, it's going to be different from Duncan in the sense that.
Stupid.
It is. I agree.
They were always just who averaged the most blocks? No disrespect. He also obviously was in an insane defensive era, and it's all right.
True.
Ben Wallace needs his and whatnot, and Dikembe needs his in some of the early years, and KG gets his in 08. But still, Duncan not getting a single one as he was anchoring so many of the best defenses ever is absurd.
I hope that's not the case, but Chet to me, elite positioning, elite defensive IQ, and elite impact. I love how mobile he is, the switchability, the versatility, but also what he does for that OKC transition defense. I just think he's the second best defensive player on the planet. I think some people may overlook him just because the raw counting numbers aren't gaudy. Chet, to me, like you said, I think no-brainer is a good word for it. I didn't really hesitate or think about it at all. He belongs here.
Yeah, the Chet-Shai relationship is not entirely dissimilar to the Steph-Draymond relationship. Draymond was more important to those teams, and again, they're very different players, but what I mean by that is you have the all-time great offensive engine guard, and then you have the lower volume player offensively, but who complements them well in specific ways, but then just these all-time great defenders who are going to bring you to such a high level on that side of the ball. So it's like the impact metrics for Draymond were always nuts. The impact metrics for Chet are always nuts. Like, they're a plus 17 net team when he's on the court. That's insane. He's got a plus 9 on off swing for this OKC team that sets such a high bar on that front. Like, it's unbelievable. 17, 9, and 2 on 65% true shooting with the second best defense on the planet. This year really has been the Chet who I've been envisioning since he was a prospect. Like, he's gotten better offensively. He's gotten more comfortable as a self-creator, as an isolation scorer, as a post-up scorer. He's put together a really nice little mid-range and fadeaway game. And then he's this like crazy efficient finisher around the basket now. All the while, he is this absolutely ludicrous, like perfect rim protector, as you're saying, who also does have the ability to guard in space. And there's just so many rare traits with him. Is the offense going to translate to the same way in the playoffs? We'll see, but like, doesn't matter for this conversation. He's been so damn good. And then you have the fact that, like, when he's on the court, OKC is the greatest defense in NBA history. When Chet is on the court, OKC has a negative 12 relative defensive rating. That is literally the best defense in basketball history. And you want to know a fun fact, Logan? When he and Caruso share the court this year, and it's actually very similar last season too, but specifically this year, OKC has a negative 18 relative defensive rating. So think about it this way. I think the best relative defense ever was the 64 Celtics, and they were like 10.5 points better than league average. You're talking about an 18-point gap between the Thunder lineups with Caruso and Chet and the league average. Like, it is unfathomable. And so I think those are the greatest defensive lineups in NBA history. When you have the level of just a chaos agent defensively that Caruso is, with the insanity of the rim protection of Chet Holmgren, with probably 3 awesome defenders alongside them too. It's like, when you get down to it on a minute-to-minute basis, I still think Caruso's a top 5 defender probably on the planet. And then Chet is the second best. And then you might have Cason Wallace out there, who's like top 15. Lou Dort, who's like top 15. Shai, who's a plus. Like, just so many insanely good defenders. And Chet is the best of them. Chet is the most valuable. So I think the impact with him is outstanding. He was a lock for me. And I actually think he could be second team if not for just the 29 minutes a game. Like, that is a slight knock. And I think his production on a per minute basis tells you how awesome he is. But again, total minutes does lead to total value, because if you're out on the court, you can do more good stuff for your team. And that's where I do think that Chet falls in pretty nicely as a third team guy, but really having a fantastic season. Shout out to my guy there. Okay. Who's next for you here, Logan?
Another guy, I think it's an impact argument. I have Scotty Barnes next on my All-NBA third team.
Agreed. I've got him here too.
Yeah, I had to omit some guys with a few guys with some pretty gaudy counting stats and stuff like that, but I do feel pretty strongly that Scotty belongs here in terms of just impact. Yeah. He's such a great defender, and you've really seen him showcase that year end to end. If it is picking up guys, point of attack, guarding them the entire length of the floor, if it's help side, protecting the rim, if it's like, he is just so. Any area you can carve out, Scotty can make his impact known defensively, and he's really flourished there. He's had a playmaking leap this season, and the third team is more so where I look at guys who maybe they're not bringing that kind of offensive star value, but they're bringing me a lot of value in other areas, and I think that's the crux of Scotty's case, and I was just going to feel wrong leaving him off this, so he is on my third team.
Yeah, it's all about impact, man, and he's been one of the 15 most impactful players in basketball this year, giving you 18, 7.5, and 6 on 57.5% true shooting, plus 6 on off swing. Like, he's just a very complete player in terms of impact, right? Brilliant all defense level stuff on that end. The playmaking is so damn good. He's such a gifted high field passer and connects things so nicely for that offense. And then the transition scoring is really good, and he's just got very versatile offensive impact overall. He's an awesome offensive rebounder. You can use him as a screener, and he's been really good as a roller for you this season. But then he also has the ability to be effective as a cutter. You can put the ball in his hands. He's been a good isolation scorer this year. All the while, he can make all the passes that he needs to. And he's just been very comfortably the most valuable player for a Raptors team that has been surprisingly good this year. I think it's tough to turn down the elite defense with the versatile offensive impact that he does have when he's still been a pretty productive and decently efficient scorer, and also super available this year. Only missed 2 games all season, so shout out to Scotty for that. I think he also absolutely has got to be here. Who do you have next?
This is where I have Jalen Duren.
Interesting. I think there's definitely a case. I don't have him, but make the pitch.
I just couldn't leave him off. I mean, I think the Pistons have had such an immaculate regular season, and his rebounding and interior presence have meant such a great deal. It's that, and also combine the fact that I just think he's gotten better. Like, his touch is better. His actually, shot making is, and I'm not, mid-range 3-point, but
right. But
inside
the driving has been so good. The touch stuff in the paint, yeah.
All that, and so he's made an actual offensive improvement. And I think Duren sometimes can get a little bit overrated defensively in terms of just what he does possession to possession. Mm-hmm. But what I don't want to overlook is also just his inhuman rebounding value that he can exert on basically any team in the league. And so, just the totality of the Pistons' regular season, how important he's been. I just wasn't going to feel right leaving him off. And I did, unfortunately, like I said, some guys are really good counting stats and some really good offensive players I did have to leave off to get Duren on here. But, again, impact, I think Duren brings it.
Yeah, I've been thinking, we had this whole conversation about Pistons versus Cavs with Tyler, and you had Duren in your top 30 players, and I left him just off, and I'm like, it really feels wrong to not have him there because I do think the physical imposition on the game is just so rare. This guy is an absolute bully ball monster, and how he has been able to still control the paint on both ends in the absence of Cade. I mean, as he's been clearly their best player far and away without Cade, and they're still winning such a high percentage of their games. I do think he can just go into a playoff series and take it over physically in the paint, especially when you do have some of these skill elements with him, with the driving game and whatnot. And he's just this monstrous finisher off the roll and is a lob threat and whatnot. So he's really, really good. I don't know if I can find a spot for him in my top 30, though, because that means kicking out J-Dub, which obviously J-Dub this year has not remotely justified having that spot. I do still believe in J-Dub, but based on performance this year, Duren has been a top 20 guy, and so definitely makes an all-NBA case. I went elsewhere. I went with LaMelo Ball, and I hinted at this when we had Tyler on, that I was thinking, I'd have to dig into it, but I really might have LaMelo on the team, and I just think the offensive impact is too great to deny. I mean, you're not necessarily going to see it with the box score numbers, but 20 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists a game on 55% true shooting. Maybe not outstanding, but he's fueling the best pick and roll attack in one of the very best offenses in the NBA. And as much as I can credit Charles Lee and credit some of the pieces they've put around him and these guys who can be used as screeners, right? And stress the defense with their shooting ability, or the mismatch stacking ability of a Miles Bridges, or the offensive rebounding of Moussa Diabate, right? There's a lot that is good in the Charlotte offense around LaMelo, and yet they are so dependent on his playmaking and his pull-up shooting threat as the engine of all of it. None of this stuff works if you don't have an absolutely elite playmaker, and that's what LaMelo is. I mean, he's got a 126 on-court offensive rating this year. They're 14 points better offensively with him on the court. And when I talk about crediting these other pieces, all these guys are important. They all play their role. But when he's on the court without Kon or without Brandon Miller, LaMelo still leads the Hornets to a 120-plus offensive rating. And then when they all play together, Charlotte has a 134.4 offensive rating in the minutes with the big three. He's been clearly the best player on the best offense in the NBA since January 1st. And so you can nitpick some of the scoring stuff with him that maybe is going to be a problem in the playoffs, but I just think like he has found a way and this team has found a way to work against his issues as a 2-point scorer and an isolation scorer and these things that we can talk about. And it hasn't prevented him from being, again, this incredible regular season offensive engine. Charlotte's 3-7 without him. They've sucked. They're 40-30 with him. Like, he's just been one of the most transformative offensive players in basketball this season. And I think when you're talking about a regular season award, like, you got to give credit to the guy who has been the driving force of, like, maybe the most incredible story in the NBA this season when you talk about a team success.
I'm surprised. I don't hate it. I am surprised, though. Yeah.
Interesting. You know, I have become more of a LaMelo believer. I was previously more of a LaMelo critic, and I just think I've seen the light, and I've seen the beauty of his game when he is put in a more serious offensive situation, and with all these good players around him, he amplifies all of them so much. And, like, again, we can criticize shot selection, but it also does really matter when you can rain pull-up threes from 28 to 30 feet. Like, he really does stress a defense in that way out of pick and roll. You're just constantly in a bind of, oh, shit, we don't want to lose the screener if it's Kon or Brandon Miller or whoever, but we can't give LaMelo any airspace because he's going to make it rain. And then if you switch certain defenders onto him, like, he's not a good at-rim finisher, but he is shifty enough where he can get by you, and now he's created an advantage, and now he's one of the very best passers on the planet. So, I mean, just that combination of passing and three-point shooting skill is so valuable. Those are two of the most valuable offensive things. He's, like, amazing at both of them. Shout out LaMelo, man.
And I mean, this is also not only, you know, the circumstances and situation have shaped LaMelo's view. This is also the healthiest LaMelo has ever
100%.
been in a single season, too.
Yeah, so I'm in on LaMelo this year. I'm in on the Hornets this year, especially just in terms of their regular season success. I don't really think that you can deny it. So who does your last spot go to, Logan?
I don't think this guy's going to be on your list, but I couldn't leave him off. I have Jalen Brunson in my last spot, and part of this is just due to the Knicks' success. I was going to feel wrong having a team this successful in the regular season, not having an All-NBA player.
Yeah.
And I think there's an argument against Brunson pretty clearly. You know, you can make he's one of the worst players defensively in basketball. I would hear that. That's why I docked him in my top 30 players, why he wasn't as high as some of the other guys. Like, and I omitted a Devin Booker off of this list, even though I would have D-Book higher in my top 30 players. But yeah, you know, I still think Brunson has led them to a really high level offensively when he's on the court, despite some of his shortcomings. He's such a high floor guy. He is really good at limiting turnovers as well. Like, just with the Knicks team success, what he did this season, 26, 3, and 7, it was just going to look strange to me leaving the Knicks with no All-NBA players with all of their team success this season. So I gave it to Brunson, but I do think there are other guys for this final spot that have compelling arguments.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't have Brunson in that last spot right now. I could be convinced of it. I was really considering it. I do think, like, he is a better player to me than the guy who I went with, especially if you're talking about, like, in the playoffs as a featured piece, right? We know what Brunson can do for you offensively, but when you just look at the case and the impact this regular season, like, it's been a down year for Brunson compared to the last two. It's especially been a down stretch. Like, since January 1st, he's been 23 a game on 56% true shooting. And then you do have the fact that second straight year, the team's been markedly worse with him on the court, pretty much because he's that bad defensively. He is truly one of the very worst defensive players on the planet. And so he has improved their offense, and their offense has been very good with him, but it's only been a couple points better than it's been without him. Like, they've actually been pretty good offensively this year in the non-Brunson minutes. And it's just interesting, like, when you consider how bad the defense really is, what that does to you in terms of the challenges it poses when you're talking about the team build. And then you look at back-to-back years when they've been way better in the Cat no Brunson lineups than the inverse. Like, they're plus 11 net over these last 2 years when Cat's on without Brunson. They're plus 3 when Brunson's on without Cat. And the reason for that is Cat may be a very bad defender, but they've actually been able to be decent defensively when he's on the court, and they just haven't in any Brunson lineup.
Does that change who you'd rather have?
No, it doesn't. Because I still think that Brunson is a substantially better offensive player. And even though I think he might be the more problematic defender, even though you
True.
think about center being the most important defensive position and Cat is so bad there, Brunson is so bad and he's so exploitable as such a small guy that defensively he really might be worse. But offensively, I just don't really trust Cat in a playoff atmosphere, whereas I do really trust Brunson. I think that scoring is so translatable. And then the volume component is so impressive. The conditioning, the strength, the ability to just hold up as a scorer over a series. Like, he's really proven that in a way that we've seen Cat conversely sort of struggle offensively at times. And then also, if you factor in the contracts, like Brunson is on a good deal and Cat's on a pretty tough deal. But I do think it's hard to build an awesome team around Jalen Brunson. That being said, they did win 50 games this year, and I do think he's their best player. But when I thought about the impact purely this season, I landed on the side of Derrick White, Logan. It's not what I was expecting going in, but you know how I feel about Derrick White. I just think he's outstanding. And, like, he's as far as possible from Jalen Brunson defensively. He was the best defensive guard in basketball this year. Jalen Brunson was one of the very worst. And the defensive value is just so massive, especially when you consider, like, him propelling this team to be so elite defensively, even without a Jason Tatum. What he has done in the non-Jaylen Brown minutes, where this team doesn't skip a beat offensively with White in a higher usage role, and then defensively they're completely dominant. Like, he's got a plus 15 on-court net rating in minutes without Jaylen Brown. So I understand people are going to look at the stats offensively, the counting stats, and the efficiency even, and they're going to be like, what's up here? Like, how does he end up on this list? 17 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists on 53% true shooting. He's had a down 3-point shooting season, but I still think he is treated in the exact same way by defenses in terms of their respect for his shooting threat. I think he has been so important to Boston in the possession game because they've been able to put the ball in his hands so much, and he doesn't turn the ball over. He's been such a good playmaker, decision maker. He does have that combination of on and off ball value that, like, he's a clear, strong plus on that side of the ball. He's been hugely important for this awesome offense, while he has been far and away the most important single player on this awesome defense and is, like, clearly going to be first team all defense to me. I think I have to give him the spot. I just think the guy drives winning in such a big way. And we talk about all the little things that he does on both sides of the ball. Like, he just really does excel in that way as much as anybody in basketball. And the defensive stuff I do want to emphasize, because Derrick White is pretty much a fundamentally perfect defender. I mean, he is so smart on that side of the ball. And then he has this totally unique rim protection value for a guard. Like, he averaged 1.3 blocks a game this year. That is tied for the most ever by a guard 6'4" or smaller. It's him and Dwayne Wade who have done that. He held opposing players 9% below their typical field goal percentage at the rim. As a guard, that was the best of any guard in basketball this year, and he does that as, like, an actual volume rim protector. He's, like, a really good low man. He also has the ability to make some of these crazy blocks as a trailer. Like, he's just such a menace in every way defensively. He's an awesome on-ball perimeter defender. He's made this defense 8 points better when he's on the court compared to off it. Like, obviously, I hear the Brunson case, but again, if you look at the impact on winning this season, I do lean on the side of Derrick White.
I do think Derrick White has a case, and a pretty strong one, in terms of overall impact, but I kind of landed on the side of the fence of just the sum of the parts for Boston, where I gave Brown the nod, and I just think the Knicks, even though I know Brunson has his struggles, I just think the Knicks would be close to treading water or below water if they didn't have a guy like Brunson. I do value the consistent floor-raising job that Brunson can do and what he brings to the table.
I just struggle with that a little bit when, again, for back-to-back years, they're better with him off the court. And I'm not saying it's that black and white, but, like, I think they've shown a consistent ability to win the non-Brunson minutes, and I do think that his defense, being as bad as it is a real problem for them and the ceiling that they can reach as a team. Whereas I'm like, Derrick White, sure, maybe he's my second-best player, but he is the second-best player on an awesome team, and he is bringing such positive value on both ends of the floor, and there's nothing that I have to work around with Derrick White. Like, he just makes everything work. I'm not saying he's a better player than Brunson.
Yeah, of course.
Playoff self-created offense matters, but like this season, what Derrick White has done is incredible, and people want to make it all about Jaylen Brown. My tendency is to make it all about the collective, but the one guy who doesn't get enough credit is Derrick White, who has been, again, leading them to these astronomical heights in lineups without Jaylen Brown, and like so clearly a top 2 player for this absolutely awesome team.
Yeah, I just think there's a section of an award that Derrick White does deserve to be in and get rewarded for, so I gave him that instead of third team.
No doubt about that. I will shout out James Harden, who I thought about here along with Durant, just because 24, 5, and 8 on 61% true shooting, like meaningfully elevated 2 offenses this year, consistently been a major part of elite NBA offense. Like, that does matter. But again, there were guys who I felt were more impactful overall. And then if it came down to Brunson versus Harden, I would be like, all right, give me the guy who has been the offensive number 1, who has had a little more on his plate, and that would be Jalen Brunson. So let's get into all defense now, Logan, the antithesis of the Jalen Brunson category. First team, I think we've got a couple no-brainers, but why don't you just run down everybody you have and we can sort of pick out what's interesting.
Yeah, so I have Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, Rudy Gobert, followed by Scotty Barnes and Derrick White.
Yeah, I think the first 3 are like the total no-brainers. They're the 3 best rim protectors and defenders in the NBA, and they've all been on totally awesome defenses. And for Gobert, his defense has been awesome when he's on the court, and it's sucked with him off. And for Chet, his defense has been very good with him off, but the greatest we've ever seen statistically when he's on, and Wemby we talked about. So they're all locks. I have Derrick White here too, for all the reasons that I laid out. I have Scotty Barnes on my second team. I went with Asar Thompson on my first team. Like, I don't want to underrate how insane the Detroit defense has been in their own right. Just this absolute machine in terms of collective rim protection and forcing turnovers, and just so athletically imposing. And they've been second in defensive rating pretty much this entire year, only trailing, again, the GOAT level defense that is OKC. And Asar is like easily the best defender on that defense. And there's some other really good defenders in the mix, absolutely, and very few bad defenders on Detroit's team, which is another component of their success. But, I mean, the guy is second in stocks this year. He's giving you 2 steals and almost a block a game. He's number 1 in deflections, and is just such a complete defensive guard wing. Like, he is an elite point of attack defender. He has this crazy combination of speed and length at the point of attack, and the ability to sort of like teleport around screens and just totally stick to you with this athleticism and size that can be overwhelming. And then he's also this awesome off-ball defender. He's this monster steals deflection generator. He's a really strong rim protecting guard wing. Like, he holds opposing players 7% below their typical field goal percentage at the rim, and a really good rebounder for his position. Like, just a flat out awesome, flawless defender, I would go as far as to say. Last year we had this whole conversation about, is Asar or Amen the better defender? And I felt that there were a couple things that Amen did a little bit better. I thought he was a bit better as a rim protector, and I also thought he was a bit better at staying out of foul trouble. And I think Asar has gotten better at both of those things this year, to the point where it's like, that guy's just out of this world, and he's on this sensational defense. So he was first team for me.
You have me pondering.
Ponder, reflect, think, find your truth. Do an Aaron Rodgers darkness retreat.
Admittedly,
do a little ayahuasca.
I do like the argument that you have laid out.
Thanks, man.
I think I am moved. I think I'm going to start on my first team.
Yeah, just an absolutely ridiculous defensive player.
Though he was the first guy on my second team, and he was the one I was debating between him or Scotty for that last spot.
And I have Scotty as the first guy on my second team. Like, you laid a lot of it out. It's just truly insane matchup versatility. He's third in stocks, by the way, 1.4 steals and 1.4 blocks a game. But the range defensively, just the ground that he can cover as an off-ball defender is absurd, but also the ability at his size to extend himself as an on-ball defender and pressure the ball and just take the ball from people like he does while he's this strong secondary rim protector and he's a strong rebounder. Like, he has fueled the Raptors being a top 7 defense. I think Scotty is a no-brainer to be on this list in one way, shape, or form. So then who is the rest of your second team, Logan?
I have got Bam Adebayo, followed by OG Anunoby, Cason Wallace, and Dyson Daniels.
Okay, very interesting. So I have Dyson, OG, and Cason as well. And then I was debating almost like these guys are always so good defensively that they should be on this list, but neither of them had their best season slot, which was Bam versus Draymond versus Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
And I landed on Evan Mobley, but I could have easily gone Bam.
Mobley was one of the guys that I had to cut to. I also thought about Jaden McDaniels. I want to give a shout out to Tumani Kamara, too, for Portland, who I think rocks. Because I don't know, Caruso doesn't qualify, correct? No. Because he didn't, yeah. Caruso was going to be a lock, I think, for maybe my first team even. He was definitely going to make my list, but he only played 56 games. So I ultimately went with Bam just because I think that he's so solely responsible for that defense every single year. But again, the rim protection factor was a big deal in why I considered Mobley. So because Caruso didn't qualify, like I said, he would have been on this team. Bam and Mobley was the final debate for me, and I ended up going with Bam.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair because Bam does so many little things for that defense and is so versatile in terms of his ability to be used in a zone, which they like to go to a lot because of his crazy switchability, because of his elite effort on the defensive glass and whatnot. Obviously, as a rim protector, is like multiple levels below all of the other elite defensive bigs, but he compensates for that in a lot of ways. And Miami is always a good defense, and the reason for that is Bam. The thing is, Miami's defense has just kind of fallen off in the later stretch of this year, and I think they wound up just 11th in defensive rating, and so it wasn't like the usual case of Bam propelling them to be a top 8 defense or whatever. Mobley, I do value the rim protection a lot. I mean, -11 opponent field goal percentage allowed differential at the rim. That's pretty insane, right? That's pretty much going to be topping everybody other than like Chet and Gobert. So he's still one of the absolute best in the league at that. And then he also does have this switchability and ability to guard in space that I do value. And he has been a very good one-on-one defender. He's allowing 0.87 points per ISO and post-up defended. So he's still an awesome defender. I mean, he was Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he just hasn't had good defensive personnel alongside him this year. A lot of issues in the defensive backcourt when Garland was on the team. Now with James Harden on the team, like there's just a lot of holes that he and Allen too are often trying to plug up. But I still think that Mobley is such a good defender that he deserves to be here. But you could say the same thing about Bam. You could say the same thing about Draymond. The other guy I considered is Lou Dort because he's just such an unreal on-ball defender. But I do feel like Cason was the more impactful defender overall for them this year because he's also this awesome on-ball defender and insane screen navigator and just like total irritant on-ball who has these ridiculously good hands, like arguably the best hands in basketball, although Caruso also makes a case there because the Thunder just stockpile dudes who take the ball from you. But tied first in deflections, third in steals, like he's an off-ball chaos agent in a way that I don't think Dort quite is. And he's also like just this insane transition defender because he's got such elite speed. I think Cason is outstanding. And you could totally make the case that Dort has more matchup versatility. Dort does more often take on like the toughest perimeter assignment, but Cason also does a ton of guarding elite offensive players. And it's just such a complete defender.
I just think he's got some of the best hands in basketball, too.
100%.
Even better than Dort.
Oh, 100%. Like, in terms of that aspect of it, forcing deflections and steals and all that stuff, he's, like, in a totally different class. That is the thing with Dort. It's, like, elite on-ball defender, but does leave some stuff to be desired in terms of off-ball defensive value up against the other best. Does leave something to be desired in terms of rebounding for his size. So, like, Lou Dort, I've never been the highest on his defense because of those components, and I do think people love, like, who's the man stopper? Who's the great one-on-one defender? And Dort is that, but there are better all-around perimeter defenders, although I don't know that anybody loves Lou Dort outside of Oklahoma City. I actually think he gets a lot of hate these days, but does still tend to get his props as a defender. Other than that, I mean, let's shout out OG, because as much as we talk about the Knicks and sort of the major weak points they have defensively, you look up and they're still 8th in defensive rating this year. And like that to me is just all about OG Anunoby. It's incredible, especially when you look at the lineups when he is on the court without either Cat or Brunson, because like he can't save those lineups. When those three all play together, the Knicks still have a 118 defensive rating. Like it's just fucking too hard when you have Cat and Brunson both out there. But when you look at the minutes when OG is on without Brunson, New York has a 107 defensive rating. That's insane. When he's on without Cat, they have a 109 defensive rating. That's insane. When he's on without both of them, and keep in mind, this is a 143-minute sample, so it's almost useless, but hilarious. I just want to bring it up. They have a 100 defensive rating. Like, OG Anunoby is this defense. He is one of the absolute best on-ball defenders in basketball. So strong, so long, just an overall defensive force. Big time in terms of generating steals, pretty good rim defending forward, although, you know, he's not elite there, but just constantly fixing things defensively for the Knicks and making up for their defensive limitations elsewhere. And so I think he's got to be here.
Definitely. He's also been on a freaking tear as of recently, offensively too, averaging over 20 points per game.
He did this at the end of last year too.
He's getting tuned up, ready for play. Dude, when OG's shot's going on, man, sometimes I squint, and it just reminds me of, like, prime Kawhi a little bit, just in terms of, like, their movement patterns.
He is a post-All-Star break machine. Last year, post-All-Star break, 21 points per game on 59% true shooting. This year, post-All-Star break, okay, it's not quite as much overall, but in the month of April, last 4 games, he's averaging 23 a game, and his efficiency has been insane.
It through the roof.
Yeah.
It's
awesome
easy
basketball player.
It's easy to take him for granted and kind of underappreciate him with some of the liabilities that he's got around him, but he's one of the best in the game.
He's kind of a defensive miracle worker, if I'm going to be honest. He should pretty much be penciled in for all defense just about every year. Like, he's always taking on the toughest matchup and does a really good job in it. Insane isolation defender specifically, like just such a good on-ball defender. You're not going to ever physically impose yourself against OG Anunoby, and he's got the size and the length to really contend with anybody, especially when it comes to big guards and forwards and big forwards, and he can switch on to bigs. Like, he's a monster. And then Dyson Daniels, Logan, who got some Defensive Player of the Year buzz last year, not as much motion this year because he wasn't averaging 3 steals a game, but why does he still end up on the team for you?
Dyson is, I mean, I'm trying to figure out if I like Dyson Daniels as an overall player or if I don't. What I mean by that is just how catastrophic he can be to a team offense. But defensively, I mean, there's nothing bad I can say about Dyson. He's got some of the best hands I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit more rigid in terms of the defensive matchups that he can take on, obviously, right, because he's a little bit slighter framed. He can't take on those big forward kind of matchups. Like, he's a little bit more limited in terms of his matchup versatility in comparison to some of these other guys, but he's got great positioning. He's a great on-ball and off-ball defender. I mean, again, with how teams defend Dyson, like, all he's got is that floater. All of his value is coming from his defense, and yet even though I struggle with him because he's so limited that, like, defenses, when he's on offense, will slant their defense away from, like, they just completely ignore Dyson because he's, I think, having the worst jump shooting season of any player in NBA history or something like that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I still look at him as a winner and an impactful player because of how great he is defensively.
He is still an awesome offensive rebounder and a really good passer. So he does good stuff offensively. He just has a major red flag on that side of the ball. But defensively, I think you laid a lot of it out there really well. And when you think about Atlanta being a top 10 defense, it's sort of like OG. It's like, that's a Dyson Daniels accomplishment, right? Because you might look at some of the guys around him and think physically, athletically, they could be pretty good. But Jalen Johnson's defense has taken a big step back this year. Nas has taken a step back. Onyeka is not a rim protector. And so there's not much plus defensive talent around Dyson. And yet, I mean, he is a really, really good on and off ball defender, very good defensive rebounding guard. And I looked at the minutes that he plays without Jalen Johnson or Nah. It's only 350 minutes, but Atlanta has a 107 defensive rating in those looks. Like, he's a really exceptional defensive guard, and so he does belong on here for both of us. How about the all-rookie teams, Logan? If you guys thought we weren't going to cover every possible inch of ground, we put together such comprehensive award ballots, if you will. And it is going to be cool because we're always going to be able to look back on these. We're going to have a little record book of our own, the righteous NBA history in the eyes of Nerd Sesh. Who's on your first team here?
So, obviously, no-brainers. Kon Knueppel, Cooper Flagg belong here. And then the next three guys, I have VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper, and the last spot was a little bit tougher. I ended up going with Ryan Kalkbrenner.
You break my heart. You break my heart into two itty-bitty pieces. How is it not Cedric Coward? How is it not Cedric Coward?
Dude, Kalkbrenner's been awesome in his minutes. I mean, I like Cedric, too.
You're such a fiend for the offensive rebounding. You're too much of a fiend for the offensive rebounding. I'm
Also,
not here to hate on Cock because I love Cock, but, like, the finishing and the offensive rebounding is very good. Other than that, though, he's very much a sort of one-trick pony.
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
And
But
Cedric Coward is a super versatile, awesome, all-around basketball player already.
these are good points.
Yeah, I think they are pretty good
just
points.
the-
And he's been in a much
Kalkbrenner's-
bigger role.
Kalkbrenner's just a monster in the minute that he plays. I just think he's so good for what Charlotte needs.
But they've also been, like, significantly worse with him on the floor because Musa's better. And
true.
he does more things for them on both
What
sides
can
of
I
the
say,
ball.
man? I like Kalk.
I know, and you always have. I love Cedric Coward, and I always have. And he gave you 14, 6, and 3 on 59% true shooting with plus defense this year. Like, he just does everything. He's a really good transition scorer. He's a good cutter. He's an elite offensive rebounder. He's a good catch-and-shoot guy. He's a solid creator. He's a solid passer. He's a good, versatile defender. He's a good rim protector for his position. Like, this is exactly why I bought into him. I'm like, he's got such a good frame. He's such a good athlete, and he's also skilled, and he's also very high feel and very smart, and just like is going to positively impact the game on both sides of the ball in a number of ways. And he's been asked to do more as a ball handler than you would have expected for him as a rookie because the Grizzlies season fell apart. And he's been pretty good at that stuff. So I'm sorry, man. I just don't see the angle for Cock over him. I'm going to be real. Like, if you want a guy who can play 15 minutes a game and sit in a deep drop and grab some offensive rebounds and not miss dunks and layups around the basket, like, all right, man, but give me Coward.
Is the 65-game rule applies here, too, yeah?
Nope. Doesn't apply for any rookies.
Damn!
Yeah.
All right, I'm calling an audible.
Hell yeah. I'm 90% sure about that. It doesn't apply for Rookie of the Year, so I can't imagine that it applies for all rookie because there's not even enough guys, bro. There's only like 60 rookies. I mean,
legitimately.
drafted at least. So
Okay, well then I have made
positive pretty much
a
that it
slight
doesn't count.
adjustment.
You got Coward on that first team?
Well, you know what? I can do that. You've made a good argument. I'll do that.
Thank you. Yeah, the rule does not apply
I'll
to all
move.
rookie.
I'll move Kalk to second team.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think the first four are no-brainers, and then I did feel strongly about Coward as my fifth guy. I think he's already so good, and I think he's just going to be an awesome player in this league. So how about the second team then, Logan?
Okay, adjusted now. I have got Ryan Kalkbrenner, Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears, Hugo Gonzalez, and Colin Murray Boyles.
Okay, we've got a lot of similarities. I'm going to be real with you, Logan. I did leave Cock off
That's so
entirely.
whack.
It's not really.
Did you even think about how massive Kalk is?
I totally thought about how massive Cock is, and I love that about Cock, but I don't know, man. He's good in his minutes. He is. And I think he has been a more serious basketball player than some of the alternatives here, but he hasn't been, like, good enough. Again, it's like the Hornets, they're 8 points worse with him on the court.
Did you go with James, bruh?
No. Shout out to Sion, but no, I went with Colin Murray Boyles, I think was a lock. I went with Ugo as well. And then I went with Ace Bailey, Derek Queen, and Trey Johnson. I left Fears off because I had 3 spots for like the highly drafted, gifted offensively, but still like very inefficient, very flawed dudes doing it on really shitty teams. And so it was going to go to some combination of Trey, Ace, Queen, and Fears. And pretty much all those guys are bad defenders too, but Fears is the worst defender of all of them. And so that's where I left him off. I do think he's giving back the most on that side of the ball.
That's rational. I mean, I think I like Fears the least out of the bunch. And what I mean, I would just rather have Trey. I'd rather have guys like Ace, but honestly, it kind of also came down to PT, and I was like, Fears played a ton.
He gave him 40 the other night. He's a talented offensive player.
He is.
But again, all these guys are so inefficient, and they're doing it on such bad teams, and their teams are like worse with all of them on the court. But the defense is particularly bad with Fears. Even the efficiency is a little bit rougher than the other guys. But I think we should talk about Hugo Gonzalez being on here, because there are probably a lot of people who are going to say, what the hell, that guy averages 4 points and 3.5 rebounds a game. But we both had him.
He rocks. He's a winner, and that's really what matters to me. I mean, I remember last year I went with Klingon for my Rookie of the Year,
right.
And I think I was probably one of the only people on the planet to do so. I really am.
If he had played 30 minutes a game, I think I would have been there with you.
Yeah.
He just didn't play as much.
I think I'm just very impact-pilled, and I don't know, man, anytime I watch Hugo, like, he's always working hard, always busting his ass. He's got great positioning. He's a really talented rebounder. He just does a lot of little winning stuff. And I mean, I've even gone on the record and said that, like, I think some matchups you could start the guy. Now, he does have his offensive limitations, right? That's why you see them go with lineups with Shireman, with Hauser, with even Jordan Walsh, I think, is a little more offensively skilled than Hugo, too. But he makes winning plays. He's always in the right spot. And he's a plus defensively. And that's and rebounding, too. And that's a big, selling point for Colin Murray Boyles, I think, as well, where, and he's got better counting numbers, but it's similar to that in terms of plus defense, plus rebounding, just impact and versatility for a rookie like that it's hard to do. Especially
on actually good teams.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say too, especially on winning basketball teams that need you immediately. I really highly value the ability of a young guy to do that.
Yeah. I just think it's what you said, man. Hugo just does so many little things. Like, he's an awesome offensive rebounder. He's a really good defender and a versatile defender who, like, is going to play with his hair on fire in the 15 minutes that he's in the game, right? And he's going to be a disruptor on that end. He's a really good cutter. Like, he just does so many of the little role player things that allow him to positively contribute meaningfully for one of the best teams in the NBA. And none of these other guys who we're talking about outside of Colin Murray Boyles could do that. So it's like, if you dropped Hugo on the Pelicans, could he average 14 a game on 52% true shooting? Like, no. You could give him more offensive usage. He just doesn't have that level of offensive skill, right? But Jeremiah Fears could not come close to actually playing for a team as good as the Boston Celtics, and like, they're actually winning his minutes by more than they usually do. I mean, they're a plus 14 net team when Hugo is on the court. And so which do I value more between sort of the empty, meaningless, low efficiency, very low impact, terrible defense on a bad team versus the guy who is very low offensive volume but knows his offensive limitations and does what he can to really impact the game? Like, I do lean on the side of Hugo in that case. And then Colin Murray Boyles, I think it's just so obvious because he actually does have more offensive skill and, like, very efficient in transition and as a play finisher, solid connective passing with legit plus defense, 9, 5, and 2 on 62% true shooting with good defense on a good team, I think kind of speaks for itself. Hugo, I think you just kind of got to watch and you just feel his impact for like an actually awesome team. And that's not super easily done for a rookie, much less one picked in the late first round, but he's been able to do it. Do you want to talk about any of these other guys in this range? I did think for just a moment about Will Richard, because I think that's another guy who just gets it as a rookie and does several good things for you that allow him to fit on a serious team, but I don't think he's been quite good enough to get on here.
Yeah, he's a good shout. Honestly, no. I mean, I felt like the rookie teams were kind of thin, too. I don't know. I got to like in comparison.
Well, you never really go 10 deep with studs, man. Like, there's always some weirdos. There's always some guys on second team all rookie where like their careers basically go nowhere.
Yeah.
You just don't get that many good players in a draft class, especially that many who are like
immediately
flash immediately. Yeah.
No, Riley was on my short list. Will Richard also was on my short list. And I liked how Riley's come on for the
Yeah, me
Wizards
too.
recently, but it just not long enough throughout the season. No, honestly, no, not that many guys outside of the Will R's.
Yeah, he's a good shout, dude. I mean, Will Riley is a good shout. I mean, post All-Star break when he's been given the reins of things more, he's averaging 16 a game on 59% true shooting. But like you said, before that, he was really not giving you much. But I do like him as a talent. He's got some pretty interesting shot creation at his size that definitely intrigues me. The pull-up shooting with him, there's an interesting ceiling there. But I do think Trey overall, if we're looking at the Wizards, I mean, has just been more consistent for them this year. And I actually think has been an impressive on-ball scorer this year. And I think he'll be more efficient in like the movement shooting play types going forward, the kind of stuff that I think he's going to be best at in the NBA is that. And then Ace, I like how his shot diet has changed from what it was in college, right? More threes, more cuts, like not really forcing himself on the game as much, and he's gotten more opportunity later in the year and has done pretty well with it. 14 a game this year on 54% true shooting. And then Queen versus Fears. I mean, both very interesting but very flawed players, which we've known about them since they were prospects. We'll see where they go as like a core duo for New Orleans, but I do think he's a bad defender too, but less so than Fears. And although I think the momentum on the Derrick Queen hype train definitely cooled as the year went on, and we were kind of trying to cool the hype train the entire time, just like be realistic. We've always known that he's a talented player, but they did give up an unprotected first in this draft class to get him. And also, although he's talented, and there's never been a question about like, ooh, can Derrick Queen do some really cool things offensively with his flaws as a player? Can he really figure into a good team in a big role? And I'm still not convinced of that. And I think, he's going to have to get to a place where he can knock down like an open jumper off the catch, off the pop. He needs at least that with him being a below the rim, undersized guy, defensive liability. He's weird, but he's fun. The passing is fun. The driving stuff, body control is fun. And so I ended up going with him. And there you have it, folks. All of our awards and all NBA stuff and all defense, and all rookie, and our thoughts on the ultra mega viral DeMar DeRozan beef. We will see you guys Monday, and we're going to start to preview the playoffs, if you can believe it. The regular season ends on Sunday, so we need to activate playoff mode, Logan. That's what we need to do, and frankly, I cannot wait to do that. I'm incredibly excited. So appreciate you guys. Hope that you will be with us throughout this entire playoff journey. This is the best part of the year for us basketball lovers, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So if you want to find the rest of our stuff on YouTube, you can find all of our full episodes and the video essays, video breakdowns that we do. You can listen to the show across all audio platforms, and you can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. Who knows what's going to happen over there? It's the fucking Wild West. I'm the most wanted today. They got me on a poster, big bounty, $100,000. They're asking the big questions. Who's worse, this guy or Epstein? It's a real conversation people are having, being brought to you by the coalition of DeMar DeRozan stans. So that's the internet. But everybody go out there and make sure you enjoy the real world this weekend. It's beautiful and it's wonderful. There you have it, folks. With that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.